with the exception of Vice Mayor Warner, who is excused. Let me ask you to please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Just to give you a heads up right now, judging by all the name tags and stickers in here, I'm going to reorder the agenda. We're going to go through the first couple of items, the proclamations, citizens forum, and consent calendar. But then we've got a couple of pieces of business here, quick pieces, but I'm going to move 6.04. That's the healthcare costs initiative. Move 6.04. So it'll be after 6.02. So it'll be 601, 02, then 04, and 03. So that's going to be, but the other items are going to go really quickly, so trust me on that. But considering how many folks are here, I'd like to move everybody on it as quickly as possible so I don't tie everybody up tonight. So with that, let me move on to There was no action taken to be reported in closed session?
That is correct, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. Proclamations and presentations. This is some of the fun stuff. So this is the presentation of the high school Senior Arts Awards 2018. This is designed to identify and recognize and encourage Livermore's talented high school graduating students for their accomplishments in the arts at their high school. This year, the Commission for the Arts awarded 8 awards, 4 from Granada and 4 from Livermore High School. The award certificates were distributed to each graduate at their school awards ceremony. And tonight, I am pleased to present them with their, make sure that they're sealed. It really is? 600? Wow. Okay. In the wrong business again. Tonight, I'm pleased to present them with their $600 award check. So that'll buy some art supplies. And tonight we have the art commissioners, or 2 of the art commissioners here. Cher Wallard. Cher, are you here? There you are. If you come on up and help me award these. And also Bob Gossman, who's a committee member as well. So I'll ask that the recipients come forward as your name is called. And if you don't be bashful, if you want to take pictures, just come on up. Just push everybody else aside. Come on and get your photograph, okay? All right. So with that. Performing Arts, Madeline Connor. Maureen Leplatinier. Allison Murphy, from high school, visual arts. and Sierra Stone. Excellent. Well done. Thank you. I'm always impressed at the amount and the caliber of the talent that we have in this community. It's very gratifying. So congratulations again to all of the artists. Okay, and now we have the presentation. This is a presentation recognizing Elder Abuse Awareness Month. And this will be presented to Cheryl Poncini, who's the Deputy District Attorney for Alameda County, and Alicia Morales, Director of Alameda County Adult Protective Services. And this is a proclamation from the City of Livermore. Whereas elder abuse is one of the most underreported crimes in the United States, where it is estimated that only 1 in 14 cases of elder abuse comes to the attention of the Adult Protective Services and or law enforcement agencies. And whereas victims of elder abuse include both men and women of diverse backgrounds who have been victimized by strangers or by persons they know, including family members and friends. And whereas the Alameda County Social Services Agency, Adult Protective Services, responds to reports from individuals, concerned residents, social service and health providers, and law enforcement representatives about elders who may be physically or financially abused, neglected, or exploited. And whereas the Alameda County District Attorney's Office, its Elder Protection Unit, and its Victim Witness Protection Division provide a network of services to elders who are in danger of becoming or who have become victims of abuse. Services include holding workshops to promote awareness, locating services for elders, working with law enforcement, and prosecuting cases of elder abuse and neglect. And whereas the Livermore Senior Services Center provides a comprehensive array of services as well as social and recreational programs to meet the needs of the elder population, thereby enhancing their quality of life and helping them to remain active, healthy, safe, and independent. Now, therefore, the City Council of the City of Livermore proclaims June 2018 and every June thereafter as Elder Abuse Awareness Month in recognition of the elders being valuable members of our city and having the right to live safely and securely in our community. And I have a proclamation for each of you.
Mayor Marchand, the members of the City Council, residents of Livermore, and visitors. I'm Cheryl Poncini, and I am a Deputy District Attorney assigned to our Elder Protection Unit. On behalf of DA Nancy O'Malley and that unit, I want to thank the Council and the Mayor and your staff for again preparing a proclamation and recognizing June as Elder Abuse Awareness Month in Livermore. It is important, and what is important about this proclamation is that it helps keep the community's attention on the important issue of elder abuse awareness. And why is that important? Well, it may take a village to help raise a child, but it definitely takes a community to help keep our elders and seniors safer. And to do that, we all need to know what elder abuse is and what the resources are in the community. One can obtain that information, and after all, knowledge is power, by attending workshops. And my office and Adult Protective Services oftentimes join together to present such workshops along with the Livermore Police Department and other agencies. And this is important because, for example, financial scams impact elders to the point of depriving elders of over $36 billion every year, according to an estimate done through research by TrueLink Financial in San Francisco. And that not only leads to a loss of money, small or large, but it can also lead to a loss of self-respect on the part of the elder, a loss of their home, a loss of independence, depression, and sometimes even suicide. And another sad statistic is that TrueLink estimates that over 900,000 seniors skip meals every year because of the impact of having been swindled, scammed out of money. So given that, we are happy to do free presentations throughout Alameda County to try to make seniors and those who care about them and work with them more aware about financial and other types of abuse and the resources available here in Alameda County. So if there are any community, faith-based, residential, or other organizations in this area who are interested in having presentations, again, free, operative word is free, please feel free to contact the Alameda County District Attorney's Office. And I'll even give you that number. It's area code 510-272-6222. Yes, that's in Oakland, but we love driving out to Livermore, so it's not a problem at all. So once again, thank you for what you do to help keep this issue on the community's radar.
I'll be very brief. My name is Alicia Morales. I'm the Director of the Division of Adult Protection. And on behalf of Social Services Agency, I want to thank you, Mayor Marchand, and City Council members and the community of Livermore for helping us raise awareness of elder abuse. And my great partner here to my right, the District Attorney's Office, together we work to help bring restitution to people who have been victimized and other support services. And as mentioned in the proclamation, it's estimated, it's a conservative estimate, that only 1 in 14 incidents of abuse actually come to the attention of officials. Last year in Adult Protective Services, we received over 5,000 reports of abuse. So we are barely scraping the surface. So it's through efforts like this that we are able to help raise awareness. Thank you very, very much.
Thank you for the great work that you do. Moving on to 2.02, this is the report for the Citizen Asset Management Program update. Susan Frost.
Good evening, Mayor Marchand and council members. I am Susan Frost, and I am chair of the Community Asset Management Program Committee, also known as CAMP. Thank you for having the committee present an annual report regarding our activities in 2017 and 2018. I would like to thank the rest of the committee, whom I don't think any of them are here, but it includes Bob Dashner, who is our vice chair, Jennifer Estridge, Regina Bonanno, Gordon Jones, Jennifer Yeamans, Jan Evans, Paul Foster, and Eric Getz. The major accomplishments of the committee this past year are as follows. The committee staffed an informational booth at the Farmers Market in October 2017, where we presented information to the public about asset management program and public infrastructure. Over the past year, the committee has completed our review of the initial data for the remainder of the asset classes and reviewed potential policy options for sidewalks and decorative walls. The committee has also discussed ways that the city can best connect with its residents regarding asset management. And the committee continues to have productive discussions and conversations regarding infrastructure policy options. Over the next year, the committee will continue to provide feedback on policy options and cross-asset prioritization and assist with public engagement efforts. We look forward to continuing our work on advising staff during the development of this important program. Thank you once again for supporting the CAMP committee and the efforts to develop a comprehensive asset management program.
Well, thank you very much. Any questions on the community asset management plan? No? Great. Thank you very much. Keep up the great work.
All right, thank you.
It's a huge task. Okay, we're going to move on to the Citizens Forum. These are items that are not on the agenda. And if you wish to speak tonight, I ask that you please fill out a blue card, and that way we can get everybody in order and everybody gets a chance to speak. As I said, the Citizens Forum, we can neither deliberate nor take action on anything brought up. But I have 3 cards here. I ask that you keep your comments to 3 minutes or less. Mike Kremer, David McGuigan, and Carl Winty.
Thank you, Mayor, City Council. Maybe on a lighter note, here's a fun fact. Did you all know that 1 out of 3 bites of food is made and produced and supported by bees, honeybees? So I'm here to talk to you about honeybees and to change the policy in Livermore. I've given you a couple of handouts, and we don't need to go through them now, but probably be worth looking at. Want to get the regulation modified or changed where we can get at least a hive or so on our properties. And I've provided you with some supporting documentation that supports that. I also want to mention that I was here in March of 2015 with the same issue, and I'm working with Steve Stewart and his team, and I think we're making progress. So I just wanted to make you aware that there'll be something coming to you, and hopefully you'll see that it's in Livermore's best interest to support that. And I'll take any questions if you have it.
Good. Questions? Great.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Let's hear it for the bees. Dave McGuigan and Carl Winty.
For those of you who are unsure about why John Marchand interfered in the trial of a sexual predator, let's see if I can clear some things up. Ex-Officer Black had multiple complaints registered against him, including multiple allegations of a specifically sexual nature, as well as suspected child abuse. We know that Chief Harris determined the ex-Officer Black deserved to remain in uniform because he was still on duty when he was charged with sex crimes with a teenager. We also know that the teenager brought a suit against Livermore. It doesn't take much to see Livermore had some extreme liability exposure for failing to remove Officer Black from duty when they were fully cognizant of his transgressions. John Marchand, fully aware of Livermore's liability, went to court to block the use of the prior complaints in court and was successful in his endeavors. Some may say that's just what he should do as mayor. He needs to protect the city from liability. The thing is, if he was really protecting Livermore, he would have done something to actually prevent the problem in the future. But since the chief who authorized the whitewashing still has his job, it's clear that John Marchand is not protecting Livermore. His willful lying to the public about the complaints raised and his interference in the criminal prosecutions show he is just doing his part in the conspiracy to conceal the crimes committed by the Livermore police. And if that's not enough, apparently John Marchand has now moved on into voter suppression. I'll admit, I had given you the benefit of the doubt that you were an honest person, but you've clearly proven me wrong. All I can ask is, does your corruption have any bounds? What I really wanted to talk about tonight is your suit against Alameda County. Maybe you can help me understand a few things. I tried to find out when this suit was voted on and could not find any actions taken by this council. So how is it you can have a closed session discussion of a suit that was initiated by Livermore but was never voted on? And how can your actions be consistent with the open meeting law when the people of Livermore are required to spend their own money to access court records to determine just what the actions this council is taking, and that is only after the fact? And far more important, it is just what your suit is about. You're taking extreme steps to prevent a medical cannabis dispensary in the county territory. It's bad enough you banned operations in the city limit. For some reason, you think limiting people's access to safe alternatives to opioids is in the best interest of the public. I could almost understand you're limiting recreational cannabis, even though there are people who are growing their 6 legal plants in their houses for recreational purposes as we speak. But a medical-only dispensary, where's the public good in that? And even if you've made it as hard as possible to determine what you're doing, I'm here to speak out against your frivolous lawsuit. You should not try to stop medical dispensaries in the county. What's next? Are you going to waste more money suing Oakland?
Carl Winty? Excuse me. Thank you.
Council, Mr. Mayor, staff, you guys are awesome. Those in uniform, I salute you. Cannabis is a way better alternative to opioids. Like that's done. We know it. I don't want to get in that debate in terms of where you could buy it. I'm here to talk about good government and appreciate you all for the process that we've been through. First Amendment protects 5 things. Is this ever get interactive? Are you allowed to say it? Religion, speech, press, peaceable assembly, and the petition of the government to redress grievances. That's protected in the First Amendment. Good government, we have the worst form of government except for every other form of government there's ever been in the history of mankind. We should celebrate the republic for which it stands. We pledge allegiance. Does it mean something? So, unify, unify, unify. We want arts. Everybody wants arts. Everyone wants the Bankhead to succeed. Everyone wants the plaza, the Stockman's Park, all of it. Let's unify as a group. Like, this, my personal mission is to get 2 different sides that both want to spend money on the arts in Livermore. Let's come together. So how can we do that? So as such, I still am angry at the misconceptions, dare I use the word lie, right? 3 types of lies, damn lies, and statistics, and fundamentally all of them are played. But I look forward to sitting down with members, anybody, frankly, that'll talk to me to go through all of these issues that might be had, because it's not deeply flawed. It was a good process. We have a good plan. Open space. Mr. Alcala is spending a lot of time, how much more do we get creative enough about moving housing, all of this stuff. We have a plan, the process was there. Those that fundamentally disagree and literally, they got it wrong. They can't say vote it out, because they voted out, then he has to take action, right, to go to the FPPC and there's specific language associated with it. But it's clear they don't like the decision. They put an RFQ anyway for that. So let's come together, right? Let's come together and let's talk through. Anybody out there, LV PAC or Friends of Livermore or Citizens Group, let's go through these line by line, every reference. I have a stack this big. It played out, let's come together as Livermore, right? One team, one dream. Gene, Joan, I'm talking to you. Let's come together for the betterment of Livermore as opposed to dividing people. All of this money on the full-page ad, put it towards the arts. You could be selling that to someone else instead of giving it to the community group for free, saying things that you don't like that are fundamentally just not true. Right? And if they are, it's well into some diversive statistics coming down here to say this, the overwhelming majority. No. Let's have the center of the bell curve be divine, right? As opposed to the loud fringes on the side that have a lot of money that want to go. We are a diverse town. Let's be diversely represented. You guys are doing a great job with that. And those that don't agree, let's come together. I want to help us come together for Livermore, all of us. I appreciate Livermore. I appreciate you. I appreciate good government. Catch y'all later. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Winty. Okay, we're going on to the consent calendar. These are items that are typically routine nature and passed with a single motion. However, we do have 2 items that people would like to speak on tonight. So what I would ask is that we have a motion for 4.01, 4.02, and everything else up to, but not including 4.16. So we're going to pull 4.03 and 4.16 for comments. Do I have a motion on the rest?
Sure, I'll move approval of 4.1, 4.2, and then everything else through 4.16. So pulling 4.3 and 4.16.
Okay.
I'll second.
Okay, moved by Councilmember Spadowski, seconded by Councilmember Carling.
Coomer.
Oh, Schoomber, sorry. Seconded by Councilmember Coomber. Any discussion on that motion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposition? Okay, that passes unanimously. John Stein on 4.03. Robert Allen on 4.16. Just a minute. Hang on just a sec. Mr. Stein?
John Stein, 1334 Cathy Court. I support the DDA with Legacy Partners on the building of the apartment complex. But as you remember, I commented on the use of cherry laurel as the street trees on Ellen Railroad. This is a sort of a pygmy tree, a lot like the crepe myrtles or oleanders that are pruned to trees. Basically, it's a large shrub. I did talk to the developer after the meeting, and he said he would have liked to plant large trees, but the Community Development Department, the planners, said he couldn't plant large trees, and he said it was something about fire protection or maintenance, but he wasn't sure. And I would like clarification. Livermore is a hot, dry community. We generally get architects and planners from the Central Bay, from Oakland and San Francisco, who are not always fully informed as to the extremes of temperature and the dryness of our climate. So I am concerned. We no longer have a design review committee, so in many cases the landscaping gets relegated to second or third place in the planning process, even by the planners. So I would like further information on why we're planting small trees rather than full-size trees. It's only about 15 feet wide and 30 feet high, and the building is about 45 feet tall. Overall, there were two other comments. One was I suggested liquid ambers, and there was some discussion about the seed pods. There are sterile versions of liquid amber that don't have seed pods, and so those could be. They grow about 60 to 80 feet high and are a full-size tree. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Stein. Mr. Spence, you have a question?
So is it the height or the fire hazard?
I would have to take a look with our staff. Occasionally around the edges of the building, you need the ladders to be able, from the trucks, to be able to get up to the top of the buildings and to fight the fire appropriately. So we can look and see. Generally, city policy encourages large shade trees. So wherever we can, we do try to have appropriately sized trees. So we can look into this and see if any modifications could be made.
Okay, very good. Thanks for you. Get back with Mr. Stein on that. Mr. Allen?
I'm here to request that you withdraw item 3.16 from the agenda tonight. It's premature. BART has until June 30th to approve the BART to Livermore project. And although it's almost inconceivable that they'll do it, it's possible. And I urge you to withdraw that until June 30th. BART has 4 lines that cross the bay. 3 of those lines have a yard and a shop in the East Bay. The red line from Richmond, the yellow line from Concord, the green line from South Hayward. But the blue line, which would come to here, does not have a yard or a shop, and I don't see how the board can possibly let go without having some means of correcting the train flow. I've requested them to put it on their agenda and to call a special meeting if need be. But would you please withdraw item 3-3.16 from the board tonight? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Allen. I'm not going to bring this back to the council. 4.03 and 4.16. Is there any discussion or
Just, Mayor, if I may, on 4.16, Mr. Allen's request, BART has until Saturday to bring this back up on their agenda, and when they made their decision, they specifically directed their staff not to bring it back to them in June. So I don't think that there's any hope, especially with any kind of adhering to public notification procedures, that will happen before June 30th. So it's pretty much a done deal at this point. And Mr. Allen, I'll email you my response, because I know you may not have heard that. So I'll email you. Okay. Right. Okay. Okay. Thank you.
All right, thank you for that clarification. Okay, with that, bring it back to the council. Do I have a motion?
I'll move to move forward to 4.03 and 4.16.
Okay, moved by Councilmember Coomber, 403, 4.16. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Councilmember Carling. Any discussion on that motion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? It passed unanimously. Thank you very much. Moving on to 5.01, it's the public hearings for landscape maintenance districts. Mr. Smith.
Well, good evening, Mayor and council members. My name is Anthony Smith, Management Analyst in the Public Works Department. The city currently has 92 landscape maintenance districts organized under the Landscape and Lighting Act of 1972. In order to levy assessments, the council must conduct a public hearing. On June 11th, the council approved the notice of intent and set tonight's meeting as the public hearing date. Each year, staff reviews the costs, maintenance level, and long-term financial stability of all 92 districts, and then recommends level of assessments to meet both the short-term and the long-term financial obligations. The city recently completed a balloting process asking property owners in 3 districts to approve increased assessments at the June 11th meeting. One of these 3 districts, Orchard Business Park, did vote to increase their assessments. All of the other proposed assessments tonight are within the pre-approved caps. Staff is asking for the council to conduct the public hearing and then to approve the resolution confirming the levy of assessments. That concludes my presentation.
All right, very good. Thank you. Any questions?
I just have one. Thanks for the report and the summary. I'm just a little confused. It's my ignorance, I suppose, on Exhibit A. So you have, I didn't understand the title, Maximum Assessment 2018-19 versus Budgeted Assessment, and then Budget Assessment 2018-19. So you just run those, help me understand each of those?
Sure. So the first column, the maximum assessment for 2018-19, that's essentially the maximum allowable assessment under the current formula.
Right.
Budgeted assessment 17-18 was the assessment that we actually imposed last year.
Okay.
And then the budgeted assessment for 18-19 is the proposed rate for this current fiscal year, or the upcoming fiscal year, sorry.
So how does that, so what I'm confused about is the CPI is what, 3.6%?
Correct.
So just by looking at the first one, the difference between 300 to 485 is more than 3.6%.
Correct.
So help me understand that.
Sure. So all of the districts with enduring caps or maximum caps have in place essentially a maximum cap formula. So the maximum allowable assessment goes up by the CPI.
So you can't go above the $507.78.
Correct. Without a vote. Yes.
Okay. Thanks very much. That helps a lot. Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions? All right. In that case, I'm going to open the public hearing. I haven't got any cards. So in that case, I'm going to close the public hearing and move on. Do I have a motion to pass the resolution?
Sure, I'll move approval of item 5.1.
Moved by Councilmember Spadowski,
Second.
seconded by Councilmember Carling. Any discussion on the motion? All in favor?
Aye.
It passed unanimously. Any opposed? No. Okay, great. Moving on to matters for consideration. Selection of the voting delegate and alternates for the League of California Cities Annual Conference. This is in Long Beach, September 12th to the 14th. Who's going to be going to the conference? Do we have? Okay. Councilmember Carling? Great. Okay. Anybody else planning on going at this point? I'm going to try to make it down there, but if you're going to be there anyway, I would like to appoint you to be our official voting member, voting delegate. Yeah.
Okay.
You did a great job, too.
Yeah.
Okay, so if you'd be willing to be the voting delegate, great, thank you very much. Does it have to be by vote, or it's just by acclamation?
By acclamation. And Honorable Mayor, the question is whether you want to appoint yourself as an alternate. It's not required, but it is permitted.
I'll appoint myself an alternate as well.
All right. You can do that directly.
Pardon me?
You can do that directly. You don't need to appoint
Okay,
the
all
council.
right, very good. Well, consider it, thank you. Okay, the appointment of council members to the City Council Subcommittee to conduct advisory body interviews. These are, we have a number of advisory bodies that assist the council in some of the more complicated things regarding library, human services, airport, and the like. So I would like I'd like to have one person remain on the committee as we sort of rotate through, so there's somebody that's always just been on the committee. And we've had Councilmember Carling and Coomber serve on it most recently. I would ask that Councilmember Coomber, that you be the experience that carries on. I would ask that Councilmember Spadowski rotate back onto the committee. Okay, very good. Excellent. Well, thank you very much. Appreciate that. Now moving on to the main event. As I said, I was going to reorder the agenda for 6.04. And then we'll cover 6.03, unless everybody else in the audience would really like to hear about sidewalk asset management. Okay, then we'll go to healthcare, and this is regarding the local regulation of healthcare service costs. We have a staff report. Mr. City Attorney.
Mr. Mayor, City Council, before you this evening is a measure that has been presented to was circulated it was a petition that was circulated in the community to see whether it would receive enough signatures to qualify for presentation to you to exercise one of your three options. That has gone through. It has been certified and is returned from the Registrar of Voters. Before you this evening is a resolution to accept that determination and then to adopt one of three different options. One option before you this evening is to simply adopt the measure and make that an ordinance of the city. A second option before you this evening is to direct that measure be presented to the community as an item on the ballot for November. And the third item is presented to you is to request a report on the fiscal impact of the particular measure. That's referred to colloquially as the 9212 report, because that's authorized by Section 9212 of the Elections Code. If you were to request that report, the statute is clear. It has to return to you within 30 days. At which time you would receive that report and then have two options in front of you. Your option at that time would be either to accept the measure and adopt it, or again to send the measure to the electorate on at the November 6th election in 2018. The measure has been circulated. There's been letters. You have received letters in opposition to this particular matter and requesting certain direction to modify the question itself. That is in your packet before you. With regard to the next role the city attorney has is if this matter is to proceed to the ballot, my role would be to prepare an impartial analysis of the effect of this particular matter and its on the laws that exist here today. One thing I will share with the council is I have reservations whether this is a legislative act that the city council can adopt. My research has revealed that I can't find any other city in California, charter or general law like the city of Livermore, that has adopted a similar regulatory scheme, or actually in the nation. So, and I've also looked at the various regulatory schemes that exist at state and federal law, and to borrow a line from our president, who knew that healthcare could be this complicated? So with that, I have engaged outside counsel to evaluate and confirm whether or not this is something that we can adopt. And if it's not, I have to fulfill my obligation as a city attorney. I will be requesting the court to opine on that particular item. That action is something I'm contemplating right now, and I would envision if it's going to be filed, it will be filed within the next week. With that, I'll turn this matter over to you and answer any questions that you may have. Thank you.
Questions at this time, Councilmember Carling?
So I understand that you do this impartial analysis. How is that, and I assume you would communicate to us, but how are the rest of the citizens in Livermore get that information?
Certainly, the impartial analysis is actually included in the voter guide. So if a measure is presented to the community, they would see the question in their voter guide, what is being asked of them. There'd be a copy of the measure in that as well. My impartial analysis would go along with that, explaining the effect of that law. In addition to those items, the ballot guidebook would include arguments in favor and against the measure, as well as rebuttals to those arguments. So that information will be presented to the voters. In addition, the 9212 report, excuse me, that's prepared by the city is information that can be made available to the electorate so they can make a well-informed decision.
Would it be on the website, for example? Could it be on the website?
It could be. The voter guide, there are rules with regard to the voter guide where it resides. The 9212 report could be made available on the city's website. Yes, sir.
How would, I mean, the other thing that I don't understand, when this puts a huge burden on the city, right?
It does. The measure that's before you today would require the city to adopt a regulatory scheme with regard to determining whether certain charges for medical services for a particular patient that was received in Livermore exceeds a certain threshold amount that is established in this particular measure. So it would be incumbent upon the Community Development Department to, well, the city, number one, to fund this, two, to create this department, this division within the Community Development Department, to then review all the billings for each patient in Livermore who received medical services in any given year to determine whether the amount that was charged exceeds the base value.
And who's the police for this, so to speak?
Right now, the measure would make this, the enforcement branch, to be the Community Development Department.
So that'd be Paul's job?
It would be in Paul's, Mr.
Oh, I see, it's Darren's job. Oh, Paul's job. This is a hot potato, I can see that. All right, thank you.
So given something that I misunderstand about this from the very upshot, I actually read the entire thing. I mean, I flabbergasted at what I saw in there. How do you propose the proposal is to keep the medical expenses without medical conditions, which would certainly violate HIPAA, but without knowing the condition, how do you know when you're overcharged? How do we know what the value is? It's very, as an English major, is so poorly written as to be just completely flabbergasting, unintelligible to me. I could make about no sense out of it. It was, yeah. I turned to the Popeye cartoons to get some texture to it, but it was frightening. I read it several times in the last 2 weeks, and it was really a scary thing.
Quick question.
Yes.
So throughout the staff report, I kept reading the words "without alteration," and yet we have letters suggesting alternative language. Is there any scenario where we can actually alter the petition? It's pretty much, in my understanding, that's why I'm a little confused by the letters saying, you know, if we don't move forward with the 9212, then we should adopt this language. It would have to be a competing initiative or something of the like.
Let me draw a finer line on this in response to this particular question. The initiative itself that was circulated for the public, the city is not in a position to modify that language. The letters were directing to the council to the question that is being placed upon the ballot. That is something the council has the ability to form. So the Elections Code provides certain guidance. Shall the city, voters of the city of Livermore adopt an ordinance, and then you have some latitude beyond that as far as what leads you up to the yes and no question. So you have control over that. You don't have the ability to redline or change the actual language in the measure that was circulated, though.
Okay, so our three options again tonight is to just adopt it outright, place it on the ballot as is, or the 9212 report asking for more information, basically.
Correct. And if we were to request the 9212 report, we would be back before you at the end of July, at your last meeting in July, to present that report. Between now and then, we would reevaluate the language in the question to see whether it does need any buffing or polishing based upon the information that has been received.
Right,
But
which,
e-
oh, sorry.
Even if we get the 9212 back in July, we still have to make a decision between A and B, right?
That is correct.
And the reason why I outlined those three steps is it's just, at this point for me, it's extremely frustrating that we can't speak about this in detail, given the three options that we've received. But I look forward to fully expressing my feelings about this at some point once we receive more information.
Very good. Very good.
Any other questions for staff at this point? Okay, at this point, we're going to take public comment. And thank you for coming tonight. I certainly appreciate hearing everyone's points of view. I do have so far 15 cards, so ask that you keep your comments to 3 minutes or less. And if you agree with somebody, and you don't have to repeat everything they said, just say, you know what they said, I agree with it. I also want to make sure that everybody feels at ease and feels welcome in providing their comments tonight. Sorry, I do not allow booing during a meeting. So because I allow equal time for everybody, that means I would prefer not to have applause either. So if you do agree with the statement the speaker is making, you can just raise your hands. That way, we in the council can see your agreement. But the speaker doesn't see it, so they don't feel intimidated whether people agree with them or not. So it's just makes everybody a little bit more comfortable. Please address your comments to the council. And with that, I will start the public hearing. Brent Seiler, John Sensiba, Dale Kay. Mr. Seiler, good seeing you again.
I didn't know we were going to have like all of Stanford Medical here. Wow. Council, Mayor, I want to appreciate you giving me the time to talk about this. As I've said previously, I work in healthcare, and when I read this initiative, it brought up a lot of concerns for me. You know, how the SEIU even got it to this point, I don't know. But it's not about cost savings. It's about the union. You know, and they're trying to use the ballot box to be able to set their agenda within Kaiser, Stanford, and, you know, who else down the road. So I'm definitely not in favor of this. You know, the California Constitution, Part 11, Section 7, states that a county or city may make and enforce within its limits all local policy, police, sanitary, and other ordinance with and regulations not in conflict with general laws. General laws being state or federal. So if we look at the OCR, they are the federal side, and they specifically talk about the use and disclosure for treatment, payment, healthcare, and operations. Well, you know, me as the person who this would be reflective upon, they've already got the laws covering it. We don't need the SEIU to come in and try to set up an agenda for themselves. So if we already got previous law, state, California state, and federal, that's doing it, I would agree with the attorney that on its merit, it would be shaky. You know, I would ask that if there's a way that as the city attorney, he could enjoin with Emeryville, who's fighting this, and come collectively together and support our medical facilities, our doctors here in Livermore, to enjoin with them and try to make it a cohesive front against the SEIU. So what I'd like to do, I've got some information I'd like to turn over, and we'll take it from there.
Give that to the city clerk. Thank you. Well, thank you.
I wasn't supposed to see that.
It was quiet. Okay, John Sensiba, Dale Kay, Darcy Baird. Mr. Sensiba.
Mayor and council members, thank you for the opportunity to address you this evening. My name is John Sensiba, as you said. I'm a local business owner and a volunteer on the Stanford Healthcare Valley Care Board. Stanford Healthcare Valley Care is the Tri-Valley's nonprofit community hospital. I appreciate the opportunity to share my perspective about why the UHW ballot initiative is counterproductive for the people of Livermore. When you read the fine print contained in the initiative, it becomes clear that the measure is nothing more than an attack on local health care and the small businesses who provide medical services within Livermore's city limits. Its provisions would starve healthcare services and endanger low and no-cost community health programs, including health screenings, education, and wellness classes, and other preventative care. We should be working to expand these services, not cut them back. The UHW initiative does not discriminate. It will harm large providers as well as local doctors, dentists, and specialty practices. We will all be impacted. Many may be forced to close or relocate. That is not good for Livermore or any community. Other speakers will likely detail the harm to city government. The initiative asks the city of Livermore to become a healthcare regulatory and enforcement agency. It is the worst kind of unfunded mandate because it threatens people's access to life-saving care and squanders precious taxpayer resources. At the end of this month, after 4 years in the role, I will conclude my tenure as the chair of the board of Innovation Tri-Valley. Quality of life is a major focus of ITV, and this initiative threatens Livermore's quality of life in a very real way. I urge the city to oppose this harmful and misleading initiative and to follow the staff's recommendation C to adopt a resolution directing the preparation of an information report in accordance with Section 9212, subsections 1 and 5 of the Elections Code, and appropriating $100,000 from the general fund for preparation of the report. I want you to know that ITV and the business community will stand with you, and together we can send a clear message that this is a community that will never play politics with a person's right to receive quality medical care in the community where they live. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sensiba. Dale Kay, Darcy Baird, Rebecca Rosen.
Good evening, Mayor and members of City Council. It's nice to be back. My name is Dale Kay. I am the CEO of Innovation Tri-Valley, but I will talk with a different perspective tonight. I was a patient at Stanford Healthcare Valley Care in July of 2016. I'm here tonight because as someone who experienced the quality care of Valley Care Stanford, I'm very concerned about the UHW initiative. Nobody plans to go to the hospital, and certainly I didn't because I went through the ER. I had to go through major surgery and spend time in the ICU. And I had every doctor, every nurse, the administration, all medical staff who were just extraordinarily skilled and also very compassionate. My care, in fact, was so superior that my husband and I both switched from another care provider to Valley Care Stanford so we can continue with these amazing doctors and health providers. That's why this initiative is so surprising to me. It claims to improve affordability and increase quality of care, but that's simply misleading. The measure forces our local hospital, medical clinics, and doctors to pay rebates to insurance companies without any requirements that these rebates be passed on to the patients. In other words, it won't do anything to address affordability, and it would put an extraordinary burden on this city, as has been mentioned before, and it could possibly cause a migration of medical professionals from Livermore, something we don't want to see. So quality health care in my case was just minutes from me, and that accessibility and the quality of care provided me basically saved my life. And you can't thank someone enough for something like that. We have something extraordinary here, and I want to not just talk about Valley Care Stanford, but the other wonderful hospitals that are here tonight, Kaiser and John Muir. We have a report coming out soon with the Bay Area Council that it identifies this area as one of the best health care providers anywhere, and also remarks that it is a very compassionate system. So we have something extraordinary here, and there is no reason to let political motivated organization debilitate our medical care. So I, with John, ask you to look at option C and the plan, and thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Kay. Darcy Baird, Rebecca Rosen, Linda Cornell.
Hi, good evening. My name is Dr. Darcy Baird, and I am the Chief of Women's Health at Kaiser and Livermore. I have had the honor and privilege of providing healthcare services to the women and their family of Livermore since 2007. But in addition to working here, I also live here. This is the place where I've chosen to raise my family, and it is the place where I and my family receive our medical care. I stand in front of you tonight, though not as a TPMG physician, but as the representative to the Alameda and Contra Costa County Medical Association and its 4,200 members that come to you with strong opposition to this ballot measure. We are worried. The ACCMA has been committed to improving our community health and expanding our access to health care for East Bay residents, and we worry that this initiative will harm access to care for our Livermore residents and do absolutely nothing to improve our health care nor bring down our costs. This initiative puts an enormous burden on the city, and the financial impact, I worry, as well as the ACCMA, will cause many of our healthcare providers of all different kind to either provide less services, choose to close their practices, or transfer to other locations. Ultimately, this will do to our city, which will make us have disruptions in our healthcare and will cause us to have to travel longer distances to provide care. This initiative creates an entirely new level of city government oversight that's never happened, as we've said earlier tonight, which absolutely will create higher costs for our taxpayers and potentially even cause reductions in the core city services. As a member of this community, one of the things I value the most is how strategic we have been in growing our community in a thoughtful and productive way, and I worry that this has potential to impact the direction that we are going. The ACCMA strongly opposes this initiative because it will impact our patients' access to care and on physicians' ability to practice medicine in this community, which I personally hold very near and dear to my heart. We know, as all the physicians in this room know, that we need to address rising costs of health care in our communities, and we are committed to engaging in a collaborative process to do so, but one that protects our access to care and not one that is politically motivated and will not deal with the high cost of health care at all. So we are asking you, as the City Council, to stand with us, the ACCMA, as well as the Kaiser Permanente physicians, the Livermore residents, the moms and patients in your community, and please protect our access to health care. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Baird. Rebecca Rosen, Linda Cornell, Olga Hurtado.
Hi, good evening, Mayor Marchand and members of the City Council. I am Rebecca Rosen. I am the Regional Vice President for the Hospital Council in the East Bay. The Hospital Council is the unified voice for hospitals at the local and regional level. We advocate for hospitals throughout Northern California, and the East Bay section includes 35 hospitals representing over 5,000 licensed beds in Alameda, Contra Costa, and Solano counties. We are opposed to the UHW ballot initiative. As speakers have said previously, this initiative places the city of Livermore in the unusual position of having to navigate the complexities of our healthcare system and will not reduce healthcare costs. To the contrary, the initiative is likely to increase administrative costs to you, the city, its taxpayers, at a time when cities are working overtime to sustain core services and address competing priorities. Furthermore, the initiative hurts all healthcare providers, not just hospitals, but physicians, dentists, optometrists, other medical specialists that will provide healthcare services here within the city. If the initiative passes, many providers might choose to limit their services or relocate, and new healthcare providers would certainly think twice about locating in Livermore. And the result would be an overall negative impact to the city and the health of its residents. We ask that you join us in opposing this harmful and misguided ballot initiative. requests that you conduct an economic impact study to better understand the harm this measure would do. And we stand together, hopefully with you, to support the people who proudly call Livermore home, protect their access to quality local medical care. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Rosen. Linda Cornell, Olga Hurtado, Jean Cron.
Hi, my name is Linda Cornell. I'm an employee at Stanford Hospital. I've been there for 38 years. I've seen the care at Stanford decline, and my concerns are also for other entities that Stanford oversees, like Valley Care. They've changed from patient-centered care to an assembly line mentality, not only with patients, but also with hospital staff. We've currently have patients that are overbooked, so they're spending overnight in the endoscopy suite, in the recovery rooms, and even in our patient hallways where they have to use staff bathrooms for their own bathroom. They put screens around them, and we've even had isolation patients in the hallway. And patients deserve better. Stanford needs to reinvest in its workforce to help decrease infection rates. It's had penalties by Medicare for the years 2016 through 2018 because of high C. diff rates. These are C. diff that patients did not bring with them to the hospital. These are infection rates that they received at the hospital. So our concern is for patient care. I thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Cornell. Olga Hurtado, Jean Cron, Veronica Lowry.
Hello, my name is Olga Hurtado, and I've been a Stanford employee for 4 years in the housekeeping department. When I started, I was part of a special project team which consisted of detail cleaning. The patient's room was blocked for 2 hours while we cleaned the areas that were not touched daily. It was put to a stop about 2 years ago. I recently suggested to management that we bring the project back to help fix the high infection rate, but was told the hospital needs money and to do what I can in the 28 minutes I was given. I stand with the ballot initiative. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Hurtado. Jean, was that Cron? I'll see my time. Oh, thank you. Veronica Lowry, Sharon Mowat, Ashley Georgian.
Good afternoon, Mayor and City Councilmen. I am a Stanford Children's Hospital employee. I had the opportunity to do some precinct walking where we knocked on doors to ask the residents of Livermore to sign the ballot initiative. And I was really surprised. Most of them read it and most of them said, I'll sign it. So I asked you guys tonight to let the people of Livermore vote for this initiative because they have read it and they agree with it, and I support it too. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Lowry. Sharon Mowat, Ashley Georgian, Diane Frazier.
Good evening. My name is Dr. Sharon Mowat. I'm the physician-in-chief for Kaiser Permanente's Diable Service Area, which includes the city of Livermore and our Livermore medical offices. I'm also a practicing pediatrician, and I receive my medical care at Kaiser Livermore. I'd like to explain the reasons we oppose the onerous measure. I'm very concerned about the impact this initiative will have on my practice and the practice of my colleagues. The initiative applies to local dentists, optometrists, and other small specialty practices. The financial impacts are likely to force many to reduce services, close, or relocate. It will also threaten funding that allows local health providers to make community benefit grants to local nonprofits and provide care for low-income families, including free and low-cost screenings, health education, and wellness treatments, as you've heard already. This initiative will do nothing to increase the quality of health care in Livermore, nor will it bring down costs. This measure is bad for the city of Livermore. The city council and city staff would be forced to carry the burden of implementing the initiative. Running a city is challenging enough without the added responsibility of regulating local health care providers. The city would need to create the expertise and find money to fund, which is a completely new regulatory scheme. The suggestion that hospitals can absorb dramatic costs cuts and fund the city's administrative costs is as misguided as the initiative itself. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Mowat. Ashley Georgian, Diane Frazier, Lindsay Dix.
Good evening. My name is Ashley Georgian. I am the Director of Government Affairs for John Muir Health. I'm pleased to be here tonight as a part of a coalition of healthcare providers and community leaders that oppose the UHW ballot initiative. While we don't have a large presence in the city of Livermore, we are proud to serve local residents and committed to building here for the future. The harmful UHW ballot measure, if enacted, would cause us to look long and hard at our ability to sustain a presence here. The initiative, as others have noted, does nothing to improve care, increases access, or provide local families with more options to seek preventative health care services. What the initiative actually does is push healthcare providers of all sizes and specialties away from Livermore to surrounding communities, or worse, out of business. The result is a community where people have to commute to see a doctor, and that isn't good for anyone. Livermore is a great community with strong municipal leadership, but local government too will severely be impacted by the UHW measure. The initiative puts the city in a position where they are now required to regulate the local hospital and all healthcare providers within the city limits. The city will need to allocate taxpayer resources to gain the expertise and then enforce the law. This will be incredibly challenging, expensive, and unnecessary. Livermore does not want a future where healthcare providers are depleted and tax dollars are squandered. We ask that city leaders formally oppose the measure. John Muir Health is a proud member of Livermore's community. We are committed to this community and look forward to working with the city to protect resident access to quality health and wellness services. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Georgian. Diane Frazier, Lindsay Dix, Kurt Kirschner.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. My name is Diane Frazier, and I'm the past president and current in-service director for the Valley Care Auxiliary. I'm also a retired insurance claim representative and a proud Livermore resident. I'm here to voice my opposition to the UHW ballot measure. This initiative is inherently against the best interest of our city and its residents, with far-reaching negative consequences for healthcare providers, city government, and ultimately the patients and people who make Livermore a great place to live. We're lucky to live in a community with access to quality care and exceptionally skilled professionals. Stanford Healthcare, Kaiser Permanente, and John Muir Health have invested in this community. Our local dentist, optometrists, and other specialty practices ensure Livermore residents have access to great local care. As a hospital volunteer, I can attest to the commitment and professionalism of the Valley Care staff. They deserve respect, not to be used as a political pawn by special interests seeking to improve their position at the expense of local health care providers. Livermore deserves better. I love Livermore, and I know the health care professionals who live and work in our city love it too. I ask the members of this city council to oppose this initiative and join our efforts to protect local health care in the community that we love. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Frazier. Lindsay Dix, Kurt Kirschner, Bill Rhodes.
Mayor, City Council members, my name is Lindsay Dix, and I'm the Medical Group Administrator for Kaiser Permanente in the Diablo area, which includes the city of Livermore. We're proud to provide care to 41,900 members here in this area. That's nearly half the population of Livermore. We're also proud to employ 170 employees and 30 physicians in the Livermore facility. Kaiser Permanente opposes the ballot initiative proposed by SEIU UHW. It does nothing to improve access, patient safety, or quality of care. Kaiser Permanente is an integrated delivery system comprised of hospitals, a health plan, and physician groups who work together to provide the right care at the right time in the right place. Although it is unclear how the ballot initiative is intended to be applied to integrated care delivery systems like Kaiser Permanente, its literal language would impair our financial health by either requiring excluded costs to be reallocated to other payers in other cities, or force us to charge less than what is necessary and appropriate to sustain patient quality, services, and operations in Livermore. I've seen the proponents' claims, and they are flat wrong. The initiative will not reduce the cost of care. It will not increase patient safety. In fact, the initiative would require us to divert scarce resources away from our members and toward implementing and tracking compliance with various conflicting and confusing local systems and requirements. The economics of large healthcare organizations should not be regulated at the municipal or local level as a matter of efficiency, effectiveness, or principle. I want to be clear that at Kaiser, we are laser focused on affordability. It is our goal to provide world-class healthcare that all can afford. Unfortunately, this measure does not address the underlying costs of healthcare, nor will it make it more affordable for the people of Livermore. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Dix. Kurt Kirschner, Bill Rhodes, Doug Jones.
Good evening. My name is Kurt Kirschner. I'm an attorney with the law firm of Jones Day. I'm here representing tonight Stanford Healthcare Valley Care, and I am here to reiterate to you what is contained in our letters. This initiative is an unconstitutional encroachment on both federal and state laws that fully govern and regulate the provision of health care. This matter should not be proceeding to the ballot. It will be challenged in court. And as Stanford Healthcare, Valley Care, and other providers believe, this measure is not constitutional because it's preempted by federal and state law and is otherwise legally invalid. With respect to your actions tonight, as a City Council, we request that the City Council request a 9212 impact report so that both the Council and the voters of Livermore can be fully informed about the dangerous impact of this initiative. Thank you.
Bill Rhodes, Doug Jones, Don Argula.
Hi, my name is Bill Rhodes, and I'm a research analyst at SEIU UHW. Today, I'd like to address some of the concerns that have been raised about this initiative and its impact on the city, healthcare providers, and patients. First, with respect to concerns from Stanford's General Counsel, I will just say that our attorneys are confident in the constitutionality of the initiative and that the length and breadth of the legal arguments laid out by Stanford, in particular the issue of preemption, are baseless. They know it, we know it, and we would encourage the Council to interrogate Stanford's legal arguments in greater detail. Second, concern has been raised around the cost to the city of enforcing the initiative. We assume these concerns are generic to any proposed initiative or ordinance and believe any enforcement costs the city does incur will be largely offset by fines described under pricing limitations and rebates in the initiative. Additionally, we foresee the potential for the city to reduce its healthcare spend as a result of cost savings to payers that come from the initiative. Relatedly, concern has been raised that cost savings to payers won't actually be realized by patients. To this point, I would remind those expressing this concern that the medical loss ratio provision in the Affordable Care Act, this provision provides that insurers spend 80 or 85% of premium revenues on medical care and healthcare quality improvement. If providers spend less than that amount, rebates must be issued to consumers. This provision of the ACA will ensure that any cost reduction realized by payers as a result of the initiative will also be realized by consumers. Lastly, we find the notion that the initiative would cause providers like Stanford's Healthcare to leave the city or reduce services particularly egregious, but typical of the hospital's responses to date when confronted with the facts on poor infection rates and exorbitant pricing. They never addressed the issues head on, and in this case, they threatened to leave town or reduce services rather than do so. Make no mistake, the facts are damning. For fiscal years 2016 through 2018, Stanford Healthcare was penalized by the federal government for having high rates of hospital-acquired conditions. These include dangerous infections like C. diff, MRSA, bloodstream infections, as well as patient injuries. In 2018, Valley Care also received this penalty by the federal government. In a spring 2018 report by the Leapfrog Group, a nonprofit organization committed to driving quality, safety, and transparency in the U.S. health system, gave Stanford Healthcare an overall C grade on hospital safety. In the same report, the Leapfrog Group also gave Valley Care a C grade on hospital safety in 2018. Livermore voters demand that their healthcare be affordable and that it be delivered by institutions that are also willing to be accountable for the quality of care they provide, and this is a feeling shared by voters in other cities too. We therefore urge the council members not to take any action that would prevent the city's inhabitants from having their voices heard on this important issue. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Rhodes. Doug Jones, Don Argula, Scott Gregerson.
Thanks for the opportunity, Mayor and council members. I'm Doug Jones, a longtime resident of Livermore. I went to Livermore High School, and happy to be here to speak in support of the ballot initiative that my employer, SEIU United Healthcare Workers, has helped bring to the residents of Livermore. It's important to remember that many thousands of residents of your city signed the petition to place this on the ballot, and that's what they would like to have the opportunity to take action on in November. It's also important to remember that the ballot initiative, again, just to remind you of the language, it says 115% of the cost of reasonable care and quality improvements. That means a 15% operating margin, a very, very healthy operating margin for businesses. So there's a few items that I'm going to be submitting for the record tonight. I'm going to put them in packets and have the clerk deliver them to you at the end, but I just wanted to recite them briefly. The Stanford Healthcare website has a summary of a town hall that they held in November 2017, in which the CEO asked the attendants at the town hall where the university hospital, the Stanford Hospital, ranks on the University Health System Consortium Vizient Quality Measurement of 107 hospitals. Very few of the responding employees knew that it ranked 71st out of 107 hospitals in a broad set of quality measurements, including patient satisfaction. We agree with the CEO, what he said at that time, which is that the hospital is looking for ways to improve. Our workers that we represent at the hospital are looking for ways to make sure that healthcare improves at Stanford as well. Have a submission that shows that Stanford Healthcare in 2016 was one of the 3 most profitable hospitals in the United States of America. And in 2018, the first fiscal quarter of 2018, Stanford Healthcare made a $74 million operating margin. They're on pace to make $300 million in profit this year. I know that healthcare that you provide to your city residents, the healthcare that's provided by city businesses, that health insurance rates are going up. And one of the chief things that is contributing to health insurance rates going up is that healthcare providers are gouging the public. And Stanford Healthcare is one of the leaders in this area. We also have information that shows that Stanford Healthcare's prices for their acute care services are indeed extraordinarily high in comparison to all other providers in the region. We have information about their extremely high hospital-acquired infections, which are causing needless increases in healthcare costs and injuries to patients throughout the area, including in your city. And we also have summaries in more detail of the Leapfrog survey, which showed that they have deficiencies in a number of areas measuring patient safety. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Jones. And you can hand the packet over to the city clerk. Don Argula and Scott Gregerson.
Thank you, Mayor Marchand, City Council members. I am Dawn Argula, and I am the CEO of the Livermore Valley Chamber of Commerce, and I'm here tonight to speak on the recommendations before you. Unfortunately, there is not a fourth option here that says not to move this measure on. But given the fact that you've got 3 options here, the Chamber supports option C, and that we encourage you to do an economic impact analysis of this measure and put some daylight on what it truly means to our healthcare system partners serving Livermore and on the Livermore community. We object for a couple of reasons, a few reasons of which I have listed here. First of all, having the city be the regulator of our healthcare system is unacceptable. Cities, in our view, are to provide basic city services, meet their legal obligations to plan and implement the visions to support the economic health of the community. And unless a compelling case can be made, it should not take on additional bureaucratic responsibilities beyond its basic mission that lay with regional, state, or federal government. This measure does not make the case as far as we're concerned. the Chamber does support controlling healthcare costs. And just from what I've heard tonight, I think there's an issue here with the quality of healthcare. We appreciate and we respect our healthcare workers in our healthcare systems everywhere. But we know that our healthcare systems also work very hard to control costs. And there's a breakdown there. And to manage this through the ballot box is unacceptable, and oftentimes we see unintended consequences as a result of doing that. So therefore, we do not support this. And also, we believe that this measure would disadvantage the Livermore community, because we would have one city which would have regulated healthcare networks, which would regulate the healthcare systems in this community, and we would be non-competitive with our neighboring communities. That's unacceptable on so many levels. So this is something that, if it's really something that's worthwhile, that should be taken to probably the state level. And obviously that case has not been made, so therefore they're going city by city, piecemeal, which is very inefficient and unfair. So we support you doing the economic impact analysis, and we wait to see the results of that from your staff. And we will support you in moving forward in doing something rational and fair. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Argula. Mr. Gregerson.
Mayor Marchand, City Council. I want to be careful not to be redundant. There's been a lot of people who have come up here and suggested this would be harmful to the Livermore community. We've been here since 1961. We are literally a hospital that was built because a hat was passed around because people wanted to take care of their neighbors, and this puts it at risk. And this puts it at risk not only for Stanford Healthcare Valley Care, for John Muir, for Kaiser, it puts it at risk for other care providers in your community. And frankly, they're less well designed to deal with this bureaucracy than we are. It would be dramatic for everyone. So I don't want anybody to underestimate the seriousness of this. Now, this is a petition that you can get signed by saying, do you want lower health care costs? That's something that obviously has great appeal. On the national level, it's something we have to deal with as a country. But the reality is, Livermore is not positioned to wrestle with this incredibly complex issue. I hope, because this is going to go to ballot, it sounds like in 30 days regardless, you will stand with us. And I'd like anybody in the room who's in support of this coalition and against this initiative to stand up now to show your support. Thank you. We are a Livermore community. This isn't about cost. The cost rebates here, they will go back to insurance companies that are in Minneapolis. These are publicly traded companies. These are well-funded companies. This is really just a reallocation of resources within the healthcare industry, and it's taking it from hospitals and local providers and dentists and putting it back into the pockets of insurance companies. And so it really has no effect on cost, nor was that in the intention as you read in the piece. As far as the infection rates being mentioned, listen, every hospital wrestles with infection rates. This is what we do every day. This is what keeps us awake at night. We are imperfect as an industry, and we are just trying to be better tomorrow than we were today. So yes, there are challenges, there will be, and we're going to continue to address them. The impact on the city to meet the requirements of this initiative, I literally don't know where to start. I've been a healthcare executive for 15 years, and this would be a soul-crushing lift. So I'm looking forward to this not passing. I'm looking forward to you never experiencing the challenge that would come with this bill. So you got to do an economic impact report. I plead with you to please do it. It will inform you, and it will also inform the voters. I know it's expensive, but I can assure you the cost of that report will pale in comparison to the cost of the effort that you would have to put forward to manage this at the city level. It frankly is a near impossibility. So get a good organization to support you in this. This is very specific work, and get good answers as to the cost and the burden on the city. And finally, no, it's not a 15% margin. This initiative does not say pay hospitals and healthcare providers a 15% margin. Again, this is very complex. This would be very, very challenging for providers in Livermore. So I look forward to your support. Thank you for the time.
Thank you, Mr. Gregerson. Okay, with that, I'm going to close the public hearing, bring it back to the council. Any questions at this point?
Sure, I had a couple questions for staff. One, The 9212 report, you're suggesting a $100,000 budget. Do we have an update on what exactly that will come in at, 9212?
We believe we can come in well underneath that number. That number was a placeholder as we were doing our outreach. We are engaging a consultant now, and we believe that cost will be roughly around $25,000.
Okay, and the other question is merely placing this on the ballot has a cost. That's around what the city would be paying for the ballot initiative to be placed on the ballot. So I believe that's at least six figures.
If we're placing the measure on the ballot for November, it would be with the consolidated election. It would increase costs a little bit, 12 to 17,000.
Oh, okay.
For
I thought it
printing.
was six figures.
Translation.
Okay. And then one comment before I make a suggestion, and I want to give a little bit of context to this comment. Between my father, mother, sister, and myself, we have over 100 years in the healthcare industry. I was adding it up. My dad's, I think, 47 or 48 of that. He worked at Merritt and Summit Hospital. And I'm saying this because, my dad was a shop steward at Merritt Hospital. My mother was a nurse and hospital administrator on the other side. So tonight kind of felt like an average dinner night for me, of the shop steward versus the hospital administrator and some of the things that, they would say between the two of them. So it's an age-old question, problem, struggle that, I'd like to say more, but I think that the only option that we have, and I'd like to propose that we would adopt option C for the 9212 report. I know that there's passion on both sides, that everybody wants the best health care possible. I think that we need the report in order to find out what that impact would be to the city, and then not necessarily try to argue one side or the other in terms of the health care that we're hearing about tonight, but what is the appropriate way to get there? So that would be my suggestion. Go for option C, the 9212.
Is that a motion?
It will be, well, I guess it could be a motion. If I have a second, then we can further discuss. I
second.
didn't want to cut off the discussion on this end of the...
Yeah, I dare not say more at this point. I'm all in favor of option C myself.
I think that's a second.
Okay, so it's moved by Councilmember Spadowski, seconded by Councilmember Coomber to go with option C with the seeking the 9212 report. Further comments, discussion? Other than something that we definitely need more information on.
Mr. Mayor, there's two actions before you today. One is to adopt a resolution with regard to the certification of the sufficiency of signatures. So that's your first action, to approve that resolution. Based upon your motion, you would be also moving to adopt Resolution C in your staff report. So if that's your motion, that's the second. That would be the action to take tonight.
What he said.
Okay.
It's the easiest one. It's clear.
And I remember seeing a bumper sticker years ago that if you think education is expensive, try ignorance. And I think this is one of the things that we need more information on this. For everybody to make a good, informed decision, we need more information. And so I think the 9212 report is certainly the way to go about it. A couple numbers bandied about. The cost of adding this was $17,000. The cost of the general election, which you saw in the staff report, was about $200,000 for the general election.
That's what I was, right. It's not only the 9212, but I think people do need to realize in general when an initiative qualifies for the ballot, that comes out of the general fund. I believe.
Well, it's an even more important thing that the cost of the general election is going to be around $200,000.
Yeah.
A few years back, we changed the election date here in Livermore from odd years to even years. And if we were to hold this like we used to do in odd year elections, instead of being $200,000, it would be $750,000. So that simple move of changing election date saved us about $500,000, $500,000.
Yeah, but to be clear, the $200,000 is irrespective of this particular resolution.
Oh, I know, but I'm just saying, but this is something that we
Okay,
did
I just wanna
to
make
save
sure that
money.
was
Every chance I
clear.
get to talk about how we save money,
Okay.
it's a good thing to do. Okay. Unrelated, but sort of it is. All right, so we've got a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion on the motion? And just to be clear, we're voting on the resolution to prepare the 9212 report
And to
And
certify.
accepting the certification of
From the
sufficiency.
city clerk, yeah.
Right.
Yes.
Okay.
What he said.
Right. Okay. All in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Any opposed? It passed unanimously. Thank you all very much for your comments tonight. Certainly appreciate it. And certainly can understand and appreciate the passion in the room. Thank you all.
Break.
We're going to take a quick 5-minute break while everybody's rearranging the room. Thank you. Okay, welcome back. This is part 2 of the June 25th meeting of the Livermore City Council. We're now coming on to 6.03. We already did 6.04. So now we're going to be talking about the Asset Management Program Sidewalk Policy.
And with that, Honorable Mayor, I'll do a quick introduction before I turn it over to staff here. The City Council adopted essentially asset management as one of its key priorities. The city has an enormous amount of general funded assets that it needs to both maintain and keep in working order and ultimately replace. What the issue with asset management is Livermore, like virtually every community in the United States, is not setting enough aside and actually can't within its existing budget cycle to ultimately maintain all of the assets that are owned on behalf of the public. So this is not a unique problem for Livermore, but we're at a point where our assets are actually in pretty good shape. So by taking a comprehensive look and looking out into the future, it's our intention here to ultimately bring you a set of discussion items and policy direction to allow us to continue to maintain the high quality of life here. So let's first get a sense of the scale of the issue here. So the current spending essentially on asset rehabilitation and maintenance is about $10 million a year. And essentially, you've now seen the first pass through all of our asset classes, which would lead us to need to spend to maintain just the essentially high risk only items about $20 million a year, and to maintain a full level of service, we would need to maintain those at a level of about $40 million a year. So to give a couple of examples there, what is high risk? For buildings, it would mean things like replacing the roof, the walls, and the HVAC. The rest of the parts of the building, essentially all the fit and finishes, all of the interior, all of the carpets, that would be allowed to essentially disintegrate over time. For streets, high risk only would be maintaining arterials and collectors. If you were, and you would not be maintaining your local streets. So to give you a sense, high risk is not sort of a future we sort of want to look at. That would be a vastly different level of service across all of our asset classes as we move forward. For that reason, we're looking at essentially making changes to how we do things. To give you a sense, what we're talking about is over a 30-year period, the backlog would grow to over $600 million. And essentially over a quarter of the city-owned assets would have failed during that period of time if we don't change things. So one of the questions is...
And just for comparison, 600 plus million, what is our current city budget?
$100 million a year. And to put that $30 million, so if you take the $10 million a year that we're spending and you compare that to essentially the full level of service, that's $30 million. So one of the first questions is, could you do that with efficiencies? Could you simply trim a little here and there and put enough away? That's the equivalent of the combination of your community development department, all of your library services, and public works combined. That's their annual budgets. Or put another way, it's your city's single largest department. It's everything we spend on police. So those are enormous numbers, and not ones that we can deal with by simply making minor adjustments around the edge. So for that reason, the council's direction for us to take a look at this comprehensively and look at the whole range of alternatives before we're in crisis mode makes a tremendous amount of sense. So ultimately, moving forward, we're going to have to do several things together. One is to become more efficient. So that's absolutely always our first place to look. Can we do things differently? Can we use different technology? Can we change our practices? The second is adjusting our standards, which means, from some people's perspective, changing expectations. But essentially, how are we going to maintain our level of asset, and which other assets are we going to run to fail, and which assets are we going to change how we ultimately maintain those? The other is shifting responsibility so that we could collectively, either whether that's another public agency, a private entity, all of those are at least on the revenue. And then finally, increasing revenue. That's the other item. Ultimately, these four things together need to be considered on each of our asset classes, and we're going to talk a little bit tonight about sidewalks. And so at the end, we'll do a quick recap of noting sort of the total range of assets that you still have on your list to do. As we mentioned at the beginning of this, that's more than $2 billion worth of assets that the city owns and ultimately needs to move forward with. With that introduction and essentially the level of importance that you all have placed on this, I want to introduce Anthony Smith from our Public Works Department, and Anthony's going to be leading us through some of the policy-related items and some of the implementation issues related to sidewalks for your consideration this evening.
Oh, thank you. So just a quick recap on the city's asset inventory for sidewalks. So right now, the city's home to about 16.2 million square feet of sidewalk. Because of adjacent property ownership, the city's directly responsible for about 1% or 160,000 square feet of that. Based on our current estimates, we expect that nearly 13,000 locations around town may require sidewalk repair for a total of about 655,000 square feet. In 1941, the California Streets and Highways Code was amended to require adjacent property owners to maintain sidewalks. In 1988, the voters here in Livermore passed Measure R, which authorized the expenditure of one-time funds for a variety of purposes. One of those purposes was to create a sidewalk subsidy, a 50% sidewalk subsidy. And the goal there was to try to get sidewalk repaired in a more timely manner. Because that was one-time funds, of course, the money dried up, the city continued the practice with general fund dollars. And in 2007, the city adjusted that subsidy from 50% to 25%. So currently, property owners in Livermore are responsible for 75% of the repair costs of sidewalks. The current policy has an approximately $2,200 maximum out-of-pocket expense for owner-occupied residences. The city will reimburse property owners if they complete the work for themselves. The average cost to repair right now, based on the last program, was between $600 and $800 per location. The current policy does not address sidewalks which are adjacent to walls or backing lot landscaping. So I have a few examples here of some different sidewalk situations. This is a house with a house behind it. This is a pretty typical example where the property owner would be responsible for 350 square feet of sidewalk. This is a corner lot. Again, fairly standard for a corner. The property owner would be responsible for about 925 square feet of sidewalk. This is an example where there's sidewalk in front of the property and there's sidewalk behind the property. In this case, it's behind a fence. In this case, it'd be about 900 square feet that the property owner would be responsible for. So the current city budget is about $260,000 per year for sidewalk repairs, and this results in the repair of about 14,000 square feet per year. Now, based on our estimates, the combination of the current policy and the current budget will result in a growing backlog of sidewalk. So over the next 30 years, staff estimates that nearly 30% of all the sidewalk in the city of Livermore would be needing repair, and that's with that 14,000 square feet being repaired every year. So the recommended policy tonight would be that the city discontinue the subsidy and the construction program. The city would remind property owners that they are responsible for all adjacent sidewalk. We would clarify that property owners are responsible for liability arising from sidewalk. The city would shift resources to notification and enforcement, with the city repairing only sidewalk adjacent to city property. The city would continue to provide a 25% subsidy in the form of reimbursement for properties that are already on the waiting list, so long as they complete repairs within approximately 1 year. Right now, the waiting list has about 950 locations on it. And then the final recommendation would be to require sidewalk to be repaired when issuing building permits with a high valuation. So in addition to the policy, some of the recommended implementation practices, to assist property owners would be that the city could establish a list of pre-qualified contractors, and that would assist them in selecting a contractor. The city could offer no-cost encroachment permits for sidewalk repairs if they use a pre-qualified contractor. And the city would work on simplifying the permit process to remove and replace trees that are causing sidewalk damage. So in addition to those items, we'd also recommend certain notification and enforcement practices. So the program would be compliance-driven with the goal of encouraging repairs. This would work a lot like our neighborhood preservation program, where maybe the city has the ability to write citations, but the goal of the program isn't to write citations, it's to fix sidewalk. The city would inspect high pedestrian areas. The city would provide notification and a contractor list to property owners upon learning of defective sidewalk. The city would incorporate financing options for very low income property owners. The city would include outstanding sidewalk repair notifications on the residential building report. This residential building report is essentially a list of all the permits related to a property that's required to be given to the buyer at time of sale. And then the city could repair certain sidewalks in high-risk circumstances if working with the property owner fails to result in the repairs being completed. So these are a few implementation options that staff considered but are not recommending at the current time. One could be that the city retains responsibility for the backing lot sidewalks. Unfortunately, this would increase city costs by approximately $670,000 per year. So that would more than triple the current budget. The city could complete a one-time repair of the most significant defects in backing lot sidewalks prior to shifting the responsibility. Currently, staff estimates that this one-time fix would be about $1.5 million, but in order to make that a real number, staff would need to do a detailed survey. And then another option could be that the city required inspection and repair of sidewalk defects at time of property sale. And again, these were all considered in the process but are not recommended. So some of the impacts of the proposed policy would be that the city could accommodate sidewalk notification within its existing budget. So this program would not require additional funds. Like every other property owner, the city would continue to repair sidewalk adjacent to city property. Over time, staff would expect that the backlog of identified repairs would be significantly reduced or even eliminated. And the city can reduce annual obligation by $1.5 million. That's $1.5 million per year. So just as a quick reminder of the total of the general fund assets, the city has about almost $2.5 billion worth of assets. Sidewalk actually ranked third in that list of total valuation. So it's kind of one that maybe didn't seem to be real high, but it's actually up there. Yeah. So the recommendation tonight is we're asking the council to adopt a resolution which would discontinue the city's subsidy of sidewalk repairs for private property owners. The resolution would also discontinue the practice of the city performing repairs on behalf of the private property owners, and that the council would direct staff to draft an ordinance clarifying that liability arising from sidewalk rests with the property owners. And then some of the other recommendations. So if the recommendations are moved, then these other additional items, the implementation options, would also follow. The city would create a pre-qualified contractor list, offer no-cost encroachment permits for sidewalk repairs, simplify the permit process to remove and replace a street tree that's causing sidewalk damage. The city would inspect high pedestrian areas. The city would provide notification and information to property owners about their responsibilities. The city would incorporate financing options for very low income owners, property owners. And then information about outstanding sidewalk repair notifications would be included in that residential building report. And then the city would repair sidewalk only in high-risk circumstances. That concludes my presentation, and we are available for questions.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Questions for staff? I've asked some cards, yes. Any questions?
Yeah, I have just a quick question.
Councilor Coomber?
So let's just say as part of this, your sidewalk buckling is caused by a tree planted by the city. Like 30 years ago, the one in front of our house, big ash tree. The homeowner then has to bear all the culpability, all the responsibility for replacing the sidewalk. Does the city have a viewpoint on this? Because I didn't see this specified in here, but I do believe that the city is the.
So essentially, the city essentially would, from that perspective, we generally don't plant street trees. Those are planted as a part of a development project that goes on. So the same person who built your house generally is the one that did the public improvements, including landscaping, trees, sidewalks, all of those sorts of things there. And that's essentially why, in certain cases, a tree is causing damage to the sidewalk. And that's a fairly common reason for sidewalk failure, and that's why you saw in the staff recommendation here that ultimately that would be up to the property owner's choice, and we want to make it easier and more streamlined if they want to replace that with a different tree or adjust the tree location there. Because I think that is something we don't want to keep doing the same thing over and over again. In other cases, the tree may be adding significant value to both the property and the neighborhood, and the property owner may wish to retain that. So it wouldn't be a requirement that the tree needs to be changed on that. And so from that perspective, going forward, there is sort of a proactive way of dealing with that. But one of the issues is ultimately the interaction between the trees and the sidewalks. We want to do better, essentially moving forward on that.
Do we have a provision in there for any of those cases where we've approved designs for real small tree boxes in which the tree is quickly outgrown and overwhelmed the surroundings? I'm thinking of around the Holmes neighborhood or some of those down there where there are trees in little tiny areas there. Do we have a provision for damage caused by those, or have they already been fixed?
So from that perspective, the standards ultimately have changed over time. Some of the trees that were put in the 60s were in very small areas that didn't have irrigation. And that's certainly one of the things that we've dealt with going forward as we've sort of added trees during the last decades as we've moved closer. And in certain areas of the city, certainly the impact is more direct based on just the soil types you have out there. On the neighborhood where I live, the homes are now 20 years old and have relatively modest issues. And in some areas, it's very different depending on soil type, tree type, sidewalk location, installation details. There were a whole number of issues there, essentially, when those homes were originally built. So going forward, we really do try and make sure that as we move forward, we ultimately learn from those issues and make adjustments going forward. Obviously, the safest way for your sidewalks is to never have a tree near them. That's a sort of a fundamental choice that we, as a community, have had a very strong relationship with putting a lot of trees in the community, as compared to some of our brothers and sisters over in the Central Valley who are even hotter than we are, yet there aren't very many trees over there. So they do, obviously, trees do create a tremendous amount of value. One of the things we try and do is minimize the conflicts with the sidewalk and curb.
Quick question as well.
Mr. Sadowski?
Comments. So in discussions with staff about this throughout the years, one of the things that I found interesting, and if you can comment on it, there's no cost savings involved with the city conducting the repairs. Could you elaborate on that?
Yeah, one of the problems with sidewalks is it's everywhere and it doesn't fail in a uniform fashion. Trees or localized things, poor installation, those are going to contribute to failures. The city's really good at having trained professionals look at very complex things where there's an economy of scale. Sidewalks, unlike, say, pavement, where a whole street will fail at once and will replace the whole street, they're so distributed that you don't get that economy that you get with grouping projects together, because they're geographically not located similar. Also, the city's procedures due to public contract code stuff. There are regulations for bidding and awarding contracts that yield itself great to $1 million project. To $200,000 worth of sidewalk repair, we're not adding value. We're basically bundling stuff into a project that the homeowner could probably get as good or better deal from a contractor directly. just because of the bidding requirements.
I think that's one of the common misconceptions is that through a city contract and so many sites, a contractor would rather do, 50 sites at a time than one here, one there. It doesn't matter. They're still traveling from one site to another. Their costs are exactly the same.
Yeah, what you'll hear from the sidewalk folks is if we could do a whole street at a time, it would be great. But it just doesn't fail that way.
And this is I love policies that are one page. So, if you can get a policy down to one page, that's always a beautiful thing. But the only requirements that we have for people to actually repair it, if they have a building permit over 50K and there's an issue with the sidewalk, they are required to repair the sidewalk at that time. That's the only time that we trigger that you must repair this, other than if we receive notice they have 30 days to repair. So that's the two.
Yeah, the big trigger there with the permit is just a check-in to make sure there's some mechanism to make sure it's repaired at some point. The other ones, for the most egregious ones that are super high traffic areas or that are posing a damage, those are the ones where we would focus some kind of enforcement or notification, and that, like you see, possibly we would have a program like we do with weed abatement, where if after repeat notices someone didn't do one that was in an unsafe high traffic area, that might be when the city chooses to fix on its dime, even though we're not more efficient than doing it yourself.
Because I also appreciate the slide, implementation of options considered but not recommended, maybe bold and all caps, under not recommended, because that is a concern. One of the areas was correcting a sidewalk defect at the time of sale. I can only imagine somebody in the middle of rainy season or something, now all of a sudden you're saying, hey, wait a minute, I know you sold your home in 7 days, but you got to repair the sidewalk. That would just hamper things. So, okay, great. Again, not recommended.
One more, if I may. Just about the length of time it takes to get a permit to take down a tree, should you be so inclined. What does the new ordinance propose to do about that, Anthony?
Well, right now, our review period is between 30 and 45 days. I don't know if we have an exact timeline, but we would look at options to try to minimize that.
I guess what I've been asked by a lot of people lately, and why trees down on First Street at Coffee are suddenly so important. But if they do want to take one out, 30 to 45 days seems extreme to a lot of people. And is there a mechanism or possibility? Is it a lack of manpower in the office? Is there some kind of a special process that takes a month to get a permit to take down a tree? I can do it in 10 minutes if you give me a chainsaw.
A lot of times the difficulty is in going out and looking, because a lot of times our staff will get the tree permit, we'll go out and verify in the field what the conditions are. So sometimes the delay is getting a staff person to go out and do it. But one of the things we are kind of committing to in this, if you move the staff recommendation, is bringing back an updated tree ordinance that gives a little more flexibility to folks in making that decision. With the caveat that Mark brought up is, I'd hate for someone to make a knee-jerk decision over a $500 or $800 repair of a sidewalk that costs a mature tree. As someone who has no big trees in his house, it's a 30-year prospect to get you a big tree. So, but we do need to make that process easier for people that want to do something.
And essentially, that is the staff recommendation, is to adjust that procedure so it doesn't take 45 days.
Yeah, that's what I saw. I saw if there was we're shooting for a timeline there that might make it seem like it's more in the realm of what most people would like to do.
Well, yeah, in the tree removal process, I'm having flashbacks to the beautification committee. We would see people that they had their foundations were being lifted, and fences and spas were being lifted by the trees, and yet it's under the tree ordinance, can't remove it because it's of a certain diameter or species. So then they would come to beautification, have to appeal there. Mr. Stein was on beautification with me for a while, and it was really that. Every single one we heard it's causing structural damage. So I know, in looking at that tree ordinance, there's got to be something where if it's causing structural damage, and it's pretty obvious that we can kind of skip that step of, having to appeal to the beautification committee.
Okay, any questions at this point? I'm going to open the public hearing. Got 4 cards here. Brent Seiler, Mary Ann Rocha, David Stark. Mr. Seiler.
Lucky night. First time, twice in a row. So most of you who follow Nextdoor, you've seen my little survey I did, and 75% of the people out of I think it's over 530 people responded to it, saying the city should own the responsibility. Really, at the end of the day, we both own it. The city can never get away from not having liability of the sidewalks, just like me as an owner. If I cause a defect to it, I assume that responsibility. Even in the staff's own report, they said about 90% of the issues caused around trees. And on the website, it specifically says we won't take trees out for sewer or concrete damage. So we, as a community, we're already kind of hamstrung with what we can and can't do. They brought up the California Highway Statute 5610, and there it already says, it's the responsibility of the homeowner if I cause damage. There's also a carve out for a third party. If it causes damage, be it PG&E or some other person, they're responsible for it, not me. The third party being the city. We have trees. I can't take them out. You've got the right of way. You own it. So right now it's about money. We can't afford, the city can't afford it. You can raise taxes. You can get a special assessment. That's the only other way to address it if you don't have money. Or you can have staff look at ways to reduce that cost. Different materials, different way of laying the sidewalks in. So I took a week and I studied this with other companies. I looked at San Rafael and I watched their council meeting on what they were doing to address this. And a lot of them are playing from was it Leagues of City? This is exactly what the Leagues of City is saying do. Try to wash yourself from the tort aspect of it. But California Supreme Court basically says the city can't absolve itself of it. So at the end of the day, we both own it, so we have to come up with a solution. I think there are some innovative ways out there. I met with a local company here in Livermore. My sidewalk's a little saggy, and so getting prepared for this, I asked them to come out. I don't agree with a lot of the numbers that are being presented. If I went strictly on the area they were going to fix in front of my house, if I went strictly with concrete, it was over $1,300 to fix that area. Using this other technology, a polystyrene that can be injected to lift the sidewalk and move it to make it level again, was going to be about $100, $150, because I had a couple of areas that needed to be done with. So all I would ask is that we take the time, we look for the resources and make that available to us as a community so that we can preserve the trees, we can trim the roots, and not have to pay $1,300 every 5 to 7 years when it pushes up again. I want it to be done one time and one time only, and give me the ability, and I really appreciate you guys looking at the tree ordinance, where I can go in and trim the roots and keep the trees here in Livermore. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Seiler. Marianne Rocha, David Stark, Dorothy Broderson.
Mayor Marchand, council members, and staff, I'm here to talk about the Livermore Sidewalk Program, and I'm only going to talk against it if it becomes a point of sale. That's what I would be against. So I want to bring a few facts towards why I feel this way. I am a real estate broker. The current residential real estate market in Livermore is characteristic by low inventory, high sales price, and steadily declining number of homes that are sold every year. Real estate transactions happen very quickly. In Livermore, homes are on the market on an average of 14 days. And with the sales that we're having, only a very small percentage of the total housing stock change hands every year. And that's not guaranteeing that those are the homes that have the offending sidewalks. They could have a little bump, but we're looking for the ones that are big and have big cracks. They might not be the offending houses. Most Livermore homes are sold in as-is condition. requiring a homeowner to replace the sidewalk before or during the sale will result in the homeowner either not selling the home or they're going to pass those costs on to the home buyer, which is generally the case. In other words, a City of Livermore policy could make the housing affordability crisis worse by reducing the inventory and driving prices up. A point of sale trigger would not be straightforward. It would be staff intensive and derail transactions. The transactions are complicated enough without buyers and sellers being at the mercy of the city or an outside inspector to come by and check their sidewalks. So there should be a better way to perform sidewalk repairs without having it placed on only the sellers in the community. And I have an aside for you. One of my clients, she's 93 years old. She had her sidewalks done through the city. She paid the $75. They paid the $25. And in the process, to keep the roots from doing this again, they drove stakes into the roots of the tree. The tree died. Now she has a tree that's a danger because it's dry, it's really, really dry, and she's going to have to take it out, and it's going to cost her $190, which she doesn't have. So, you know, when we're doing this, I think we have to think of consequences that could happen. And I just had another sale where it did take 45 days to get a permit to remove 3 trees that straddled the property line, and we couldn't put a fence up. So it did take 45 days. Thank you.
David Stark and Dorothy Broderson. Mr. Stark.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and City Council members. First, I want to start by thanking staff for taking our recommendations into consideration by removing the point of sale trigger from their recommendations. And based on the testimony from Ms. Roja providing some additional backup, I would encourage staff, regardless of where you go with this tonight, to not go down the path of point of sale. A good start, not completely there though. The Bay East Association of Realtors, one of our primary interests is making sure that real estate transactions move smoothly, but we also protect private property rights and the enjoyment of home ownership. And we're not quite there completely with the staff recommendation. This is a community that values and really relies on public input. I don't need to remind you about the significant amount of public input in terms for planning the future of the downtown. The actions that you're considering tonight could impact a majority of residents here in the city of Livermore. Unless there is some immediate health and safety danger, we would ask you to do more public outreach, more education about the responsibility of property owners. The initial feedback when we daylighted this issue with our members was that, gosh, I didn't know that property owners were responsible for these things. Further complicating this fact is the love of trees that this community has been evidenced by testimony from other speakers tonight. There's still some kinks that need to be worked out. Plus, there's some basic economics. The fact that it's difficult to achieve an economy of scale places even more burden on individual homeowners. The estimates of $500 to $800 based on conversations I've had with real estate professionals that have had to deal directly with this issue, we believe those estimates are low. The city, by eliminating its grant program, you're going to save some money for sure. You do clearly have some fantastic staff resources. We would ask you to be smart in this. More public outreach, perhaps a triage system, no pun intended with the triage, sorry, sorry about that. But a way to identify the most offending areas and possibly look for either different materials, as the previous speaker mentioned, or different strategies to approach this so there's not a massive burden on homeowners. You're taking away that grant program that did make a difference. Let's see if there's something else that we can do to take that sting out, starting with daylighting this issue to the community and then figuring out some smart ways to work with this. Last observation is contractors. The same issues that come up with the city trying to secure contractors to do a large program, homeowners are going to have an even tougher job. It's going to be hard for them to secure responsible contractors that are going to want to come out and do this job. So perhaps as part of your daylighting, you start that process first, figure out who's going to want to do these jobs, and have that as part of the package that you roll out to the community. If you don't have to pass it tonight, please don't. If you do have to pass it tonight, please direct staff to have a robust public engagement program that's part of what you do tonight. I'm available if you have any questions about the real estate market or how this could impact homeownership.
Any questions, Mr. Stark, at this point? No, great.
Okay, thank you
very much. And finally, Dorothy Broderson.
So thank you. Dorothy Broderson. I work in Livermore. I do walk a lot, and I do really appreciate that it's not a point of sale because I am a realtor. And as a seniors real estate specialist, this puts an extra burden on those people. Also, anyone that does own a corner lot, having to have such responsibility. And having a city sidewalk, because that's what they call them, city sidewalks, not homeowner your sidewalk. That having it already a program where the homeowner is having to pay 25% is a lot. I do know clients that I've sold homes to that they have been on the repair list since 2015 and still have not had any help with getting theirs repaired. As a realtor, trying to get a contractor, cement contractor in just to fix steps on a home, nobody will even bid on the job. It's very, very difficult. In other cities, sometimes they shave the sidewalk, which I think is a cheaper fix, so that's something to consider as well. But once again, thank you for not having this be a point of sale, because it definitely would impact what's happening. Thank you.
Thank you. And finally, John Stein.
John Stein, 1334 Cathy Court. I think that trees are important, as you well know, but it's interesting. If you walk downtown, you'll see a lot of contractor stamps from the 1920s, which means that a sidewalk can last 100 years. The reason is the construction techniques then. They didn't use sand fill or base under the sidewalk. They used native soil. And in general, the trees were not planted between the street and the sidewalk or in tree wells because there was enough setback to allow the tree to be planted setback from the sidewalk. So there are ways of reducing the interference between trees and sidewalks. Also, it's worthwhile looking forward and saying, what can we do to reduce this problem? One of the things is to put in root barriers between lawns and sidewalks and put in larger tree wells. It's a small incremental cost when you install a sidewalk, but will reduce the probability of roots interfering and lifting the sidewalks. Finally, as Mr. Spadovsky said, I was on the beautification committee for 8 years, and we did get a lot of people complaining that trees were damaging foundations, sidewalks, whatever. About 50% of the cases, that was true, and we allowed the removal and replacement of the trees. It seemed like about 50% of them, people just didn't want the trees there. So those were generally denied if it was a heritage tree. Finally, just to emphasize the importance of trees, my daughter lives down in Southern California, and she moved from LA County into Glendale, which is a city which has very, very stringent heritage tree ordinance. And the difference in property values for an equivalent home is somewhere between 10 and 20% for given square footage and lot size. So the appearance of a community in terms of well-maintained streets and sidewalks and lots of trees. I mean, they have a very, very aggressive tree replacement program and a list of allowed trees. So that is important in the appearance and value, which eventually means assessed valuation of the home and the revenue the city gains from property tax. Finally, one of the underlying problems that's never mentioned is retirement benefits, which are becoming a larger and larger part of the city budget. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Stein. Okay, I'm going to close the public comment period and bring it back to the council. Questions at this point?
I just had a quick question about the encroachment permits. One of the recommended implementation practices was establishing a list of pre-qualified contractors and then offer the no-cost encroachment permit if a pre-qualified contractor is used. Is there any thought to tracking which contractors are actually coming out through the encroachment permits? And if somebody pre-qualifies, but as some speakers have said tonight, if they don't show up or they don't work, then we drop them off the list and go for somebody else?
Yeah, I think our thinking of how the list would work is you do an annual solicitation, and folks who want to be on the list get on. If you find that some of them are not responsive, you could, next time the list comes up, not have them be on, I suppose, pending what our attorneys say we can do legally.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that's the kind of thing we're looking at, is to solve that problem because anybody who has tried to get a contractor for almost anything, it is hard these days. But if you talk to specifically contractors about pre-qualified lists or something, they all seem to be interested in getting on. I don't know for the smallest job if they're going to be responsive, but that's something we'd want to look at and provide the resource we can to folks.
But yeah, if we can, somehow group these together, through the process and say, hey, look, even if somebody can apply for the encroachment permit and then you just, I don't know, then, hey, contractors, here's what we have. Instead of the homeowner going to each contractor, I don't know if we could provide them with a list of people who pulled the permit at no cost and say, I want to do this, get out here. Maybe kind of reverse, so the contractors could just pull from the list and kind of, instead, if we have a list of 5 or 6 contractors and you're calling each one, trying to get them out to do the quote, maybe the resident pulls the no-cost encroachment permit, and then you just say, okay, contractors, here's everybody who's ready to go. Because where I'm coming with this whole sidewalk issue, where I'm coming from, I think there's a portion of the sidewalk, I believe it's owned by my neighbor. I'm not sure. It's their tree that's causing it. It's a question of the pad is a portion on my property, but the lift is on his property, whatever. Wasn't really concerned about that. Talked to my neighbor about it. At the time was a council member. But anyway, and said, hey, I'm going to go ahead and, yeah, what a nightmare for that neighborhood. You know, a council member and a planning commissioner right on the same corner. So that just shows there's no favoritism, because that was back in about 2012 that I was put on the list, or he was put on the list. Again, I don't know. I asked him if he wanted me to do it, and he said sure. And it's been, since then we've heard nothing. And it's a good lift. I mean, every year I was out there spray painting it, before Halloween and putting up a barricade so it would stop some kids from tripping. And right now our system is just failing. So there's 2 options. It's either change the system to encourage the homeowners to make the repairs, or infuse it with a level of money that would actually make a difference. And we saw the slide about the infusion of cash that it would need to actually start to get these repairs going, and that's not sustainable for the city. So I would lean towards turning it over, to the residents as the ordinance suggests. And a side note to that, I don't know of any city that's not looking at this issue or constantly looking at it. Most cities are, I shouldn't say most, but I've heard many cities are now looking at, hey, streets and highway code, it's your responsibility. I mean, legally, it's, you could argue it's kind of a gift of public funds, that it's not something that the city's required to maintain. We're just doing it. So in my mind, there's 2 options. One, that infusion of cash, that we have to commit to that level of funding to actually make a difference and to get through the backlog, or 2, provide whatever assistance we possibly can with the residents in the permitting process, make it as easy as possible, and go that route. I do like, though, that we're grandfathering in people who are on the list. So if that's one of the urgency matters, I think, would be approving it tonight. I don't want to suddenly see an influx of pavement repair if we don't do it tonight. Then the word gets out that, hey, if you just, claim this with the city, you'll be grandfathered in. I think the good actors, should be grandfathered in, and the people who haven't bothered to look into repairing it or addressing their issues, then they're more than welcome to get assistance from the city with the contractors lists and the no fee encroachment. So that's where I'm at. I'm leaning towards adopting the proposed ordinance as is.
Councilmember Carling?
So I mostly agree with my colleague. I think I do want to point out two things that or a couple of people mentioned, Mr. Seiler and Mr. Stark both, I think, were suggesting a pretty strong outreach to the public, because I think from Mr. Seiler's point of view, people are pretty confused as to who actually owns the sidewalk. So, and I think Mr. Stark doubled down on that by saying we needed a very strong public outreach. My anxiety is backing lots, and I'll admit, I have one of those houses with a backing lot, and I think I would agree to adopting the measure, but I would like for you to rethink backing lots, because right now the way it stands, I don't agree with it, because so my backing lot, I back up to Kincannon, and between my fence and the sidewalk is a row of junipers that I guess the developer put in. I have no idea, that the city takes care of. I don't take care of those junipers. But it isn't as if my fence is against the sidewalk like the photo shows, for example. Now, I'm not complaining about the photo. That's the one you took. And there are plenty of examples that that photo represents. Driving over here, knowing that we were going to have sidewalks on the agenda tonight, I drove down Arroyo, and on the west side of Arroyo, between Kincannon and the bridge, there's a wall there, and it's zigzaggy. So as I understand it, it goes between city-owned property and the homeowner-owned property. That's one point. The other is there's a bunch of trees planted there, some of which have horribly torn up that sidewalk. And you're suddenly going to give this responsibility to the person that lives on the other side, which is the way that I think the way the ordinance reads right now. Is that true?
That would be correct. We would be agreeing with the Streets and Highways Code.
So I think that part ought to be rewritten and reviewed. I mean, the other part where it's in front of your house, I guess I can live with. But I think we need a very, very strong public outreach, because I agree with Mr. Seiler. I'm not sure everybody thinks they own the sidewalk, despite the law from 1941, which says we do.
Just clarification so I understand. On the backing lot, your preference would be the city retains responsibility for 100%?
No, I would like for you to rethink how we think about this. I'm not suggesting that you just keep ownership of it. I mean, one of the suggestions I thought I heard earlier on was for the city to repair it and then turn it over to the homeowner. I just would hate. I mean, frankly, the backing lot, the sidewalk behind my house is fine. But there are trees planted in tree wells along Kincannon, down the street from me. I frankly didn't drive down there to look, but because my route on the way over here was down Arroyo, I did look there, and there's some stretches there where it's pretty awful. That's way over 3/4 of an inch, which I understand. If you don't know, that seems to be the measure above which you're now in violation of tripping hazard. So. I just think we ought to rethink backing lots.
So one option would be, and that's why it is listed, although staff didn't recommend it, if you wanted to include that in the motion, the one-time fix before that was turned over, if that would be something that would be meaningful as far as an addition, that would be an amending motion to the staff recommendation.
Is that the $670,000? No. What is the cost?
Essentially, that would basically cost about $1.5 million is our rough estimate of that. But we would need to do further exploration of that. But if that were the direction to us, we could certainly bring that additional information when some of the other items return. And so that would be
what period of time?
That would be a one-time fix, and ultimately we could ultimately figure out what the most appropriate time to do that, and only upon the fix would that transfer.
Okay.
A clarifying question. So that 1.5 million, that would be 100% funded by the city, the worst sites. Mm-hmm. We could technically adopt it as written and then direct to, but we're not saying hold up the ordinance. We're saying that you would go back and look before turning that over to the residents, or could we turn it over stating that we'll look and see how much it costs and where the worst sites are? Just
to be clear, those next steps are essentially direction to staff, and those will return to you. So in other words, if your direction was to do a one-time fix before those adjustments were made, that certainly can be part of your motion tonight. And then those implementing steps come back in the proper order.
Well, or if you wanted to direct us to go investigate that, and we come back and tell you whether it's 1.5 or more or less than that, and then decide whether you want to implement that piece or whether you're comfortable without the fix, we could do that also.
So you don't currently have an ordinance, so on your agenda here. So what you have before you today is a resolution with a policy. You do not have a current ordinance before you for introduction. So that is one of the items that we would return to you with in a future date.
You need the first and second reading. And
yeah, so you don't. That's not even before you today.
Oh,
okay. So we could give direction to go.
You're providing direction and adopting a resolution this evening dealing with the 25% match and essentially the closing of the existing repair program.
Because I also want to state that I agree with the public outreach to the best of our abilities. I know it only goes so far, because it is a shock to people that, hey, I own that sidewalk, or I'm responsible for the maintenance. Most, that's one of those kind of city trivia things that you could ask people, who owns the sidewalk in front of your house, and most people would never guess that it's theirs by the Streets and Highway Code. So I agree with the public outreach. I'm a little leery if we're starting to say, okay, in this case it's maintained by the city, and then in this case it isn't. I'm trying to think of kind of an equity situation. I feel for people that don't realize that this situation is out there. So I do think that that as much outreach as possible is always a good thing. But then I'm also leery of saying, yes, we'll go ahead, because it's still, the ownership is still the ownership, or the maintenance responsibility still falls on another party. I'm just always kind of leery of, choosing one over the other. I would be open to exploring a one-time fix, because I think, to address the worst of the worst and see what, that looks like. Yeah, so.
Councilmember
No,
Kennedy?
and I'm very sympathetic to both points of view here. I'm especially concerned that since we lost 99% of our attendance tonight, it would have been nice to have a lot of residents listen to what's going on and show up for this. I would feel for people, and as Councilmember Spadowski just mentioned, most people do tend to think the first call they make when that 3-inch crack in the sidewalk occurs is to Darren. He'll come on it over and take care of it for you. And it's just not the case. However, we had stepping it down to eliminating the subsidy, we did it in 2007 too, and dropped it from 50 to 25%. And yet, here we are. Everybody made it through that okay. And that was roughly about when we were looking at our front sidewalk and our ash tree started encroaching on the house. So it's been good since then. The tree's been good to us. However, if we want to get that tree removed, I'd really like to emphasize the permitting process for that we have an expedited method of getting those trees which have really shredded things. And they're out there, trust me, because there's no one who appreciates flatter sidewalks better than me at night without my headlamp on. You'll find a way. That phone. I do notice sidewalks with problems, probably more than most. I go flying out of the chair at high speed trying to get around the neighborhood. But it will take some outreach. Since we're not at the point of an ordinance at this point, I think it's great that we can make some of these changes, get together a plan for reaching out, whether it be both through our website, maybe the city newsletter, maybe other venues as needed. I know we do have a presence on Nextdoor in town that's quite ample. I think ample's a good word. I really would like to look, while we're looking at things, is the use of alternate and newer technologies than just pouring concrete. The idea of the foam injected underneath to raise the sidewalk, if that's it's a thing that's right alongside the expansion joints. Wow, kind of neat. I don't know how it would work in a multi-fragged broken windshield looking sidewalk there. You get some of these that are just completely destroyed, and that probably won't do it. But I do believe that we got some uses for that if it is indeed that cheap. How can we do it? Are they approved by anybody? Are they experimental? Where are they going? So we'll see what we can do. I'm looking forward to seeing this again.
And one thing the city is doing this year with their repair program is we are doing some horizontal planing. So we're actually cutting down some of the sidewalk. So it's a newer. We haven't.
And it's
done
a great
before.
fix too. Honestly, it really works well. It really works well. They did it on the disability ramp at South K and northeast side of South K and Second. So I can go fast up that ramp now.
So the main interest here is, of course, leveling the sidewalks. And so have we looked at innovative technologies? And we do the planing. I've seen that before. I'm not sure how because the sidewalks are already lifted, so I'm not sure how injecting polyethylene would affect that. You bring the other side up, but then those are higher than the rest of the sidewalk. Where you just do the whole thing. So you just do like maybe a couple 100 feet of it to bring everything up.
Well, if it's sinking.
Sagging.
Yeah.
Yeah, but tree roots though.
Well, I know, but I think
buckle
you're starting
it
with a
up.
different problem.
Yeah. Okay.
There might be some sloughing that causes the sagging.
And I know in most of the new developments we're doing now, we're requiring root barriers. Is that correct?
That's correct. Yes.
Yeah. So we're implementing root barriers, and I know that probably 12 years ago I planted a tree right in the middle of the lawn, but I used a root barrier around it, and none of those roots have come to the surface. And the new tree's getting bigger. They work. Yeah, so we do have that. So we're not necessarily going back and doing the same mistakes over again. So hopefully we've got the root barriers in place will help mitigate this. Level sidewalks, we are considering the planing and possible innovative technologies to level sidewalks. So that's good. I agree with more feedback. And as the staff report said, we agreed to use surplus funds, but what I hear from the city manager constantly is there are no surplus funds. There's no extra money. So it worked for a while, so we got to find other ways to make this work. Councilmember Spadowski mentioned that people thinking that the sidewalk in front, who owns that? Really, I was amazed at the sidewalks in back, because I also used to live down the street from you, and I backed up to Kincannon too. But I drive by that one on Arroyo that's about a 4-inch offset.
It's awful.
And if I lived there and somebody said, "Oh, by the way, that sidewalk that you can't walk to in 10 minutes, that belongs to you, even though you can't get to it." So I'm sensitive to that as well. And I believe in a robust educational effort. And I would like to see what that would actually cost, because as part of that robust outreach effort, to let these people know that, oh, by the way, that tree on the other side of the wall behind your house, you're responsible for that. Because if I had known I was responsible for it, I might have done something proactive to prevent it from lifting the sidewalk. So I would like to I agree with Councilmember Carling, maybe look at that and see what it costs to do a one-time repair of those. There aren't that many of them. But man, that one on Arroyo was bad. Mm-hmm. So, look at some of those, and let's find out what that would be. And along with the public outreach, come back and say, okay, we're going to turn this over to you in good shape, and from now on, it's yours. You're going to be responsible for this. But I feel better than that, than just handing it something over. So if you could come back with that. I agree with, I think the ordinance is well written. And it looks like we're allowing some creativity, and we've taken steps to mitigate future problems. And I think that just a few tweaks like that and some additional information, some more outreach and a little bit more information.
So our recommendation this evening is for you to adopt the resolution. That does two very specific things. That ends essentially adding people to the list and ends essentially the subsidy, but retains essentially the subsidy for folks who were on that existing list if they do the repairs themselves, and we will bring back those implementing details, and then directs us to do a number of items. I heard agreement on all of the items on that list, and you've added a few more to that list. Which we would incorporate, of course, into our recommendation as well, bringing back additional information on the cost for a one-time fix, so that you can consider that as a part of future actions.
So do I have a motion for what he said?
Yes, I'll move adoption of the resolution and directing staff to prepare the ordinance, specifically also looking at a public outreach effort and cost estimate for repairing the worst of the worst when it comes to the
backing lot areas.
Backing lot issues.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, moved by Councilor Spadowski, seconded by Councilmember Carling. Discussion on the motion. Again, thank you for all your comments tonight. Certainly appreciate that as well. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? That passes unanimously. Thank you very much. Moving on to matters initiated and council member reports.
Well, let's start with council member reports. How about that? I've got nothing to initiate. Give me a minute, though. Give me a minute. Last 3 meetings. I'll tell you what. I got lots of free thought here, free range thinking. This goes back a ways since we've had any meetings to report and stuff like that. And I'll go back as far as we looked at one of LAVTA's new bus stops, bus platforms up on, where were we? On,
it's a good one.
It's east of town, and the mayor and I waited out there to check out the artwork. A bunch of students from middle school. Where were they from? I have it written down in my truck. It's as it usually works out. But enjoyed reopening that with a beautiful VW bus-looking creature right at so anybody can enjoy that waiting for a bus. You can look at a real bus, at least from my world, and see how that was. We then had the 4th of July parade, which many of us, if not all of us, participated
Or even
in.
the rodeo parade.
Rodeo parade of that too.
Yeah.
Rodeo parade. It's the same thing, only a different day. It's
at this hour.
Exactly. And a lot of late hours lately. So I just got off the road yesterday. So, and that was fantastic. I failed to catch up to the cattle up front that started the parade, but I heard they were tremendous. It was really a good thing to go to. I've since had 2 LAVTA board meetings and LAVTA finance subcommittee meetings since the time we've last had to report. It's amazing we're before 10 o'clock. And I can't think of anything else right at this moment, no. I thought we'd be going late into the night tonight, too.
Very good. Councilor Carling.
Yes, thanks. As my colleague mentioned, it's been a while. I've done a number of stop waste meetings, some advisory board interviews, as the mayor mentioned earlier. The mayor and I did the sculpture dedication way back in May.
So we've had some late meetings.
Yeah, we did, yeah. The Key to the City graduation, the groundbreaking for Stockman's Park, which I think was exciting to move that forward. And I won't bore you with the rest. I do want to bring up one thing on matters initiated, and it was brought to my attention by at one of the Stop Waste meetings, in that there's a what's called a Bay-Friendly Rated Landscapes program in Alameda County, and I was disappointed to see that of all the cities in Alameda, 2 of them, 2 cities, Livermore and Piedmont, have never have a landscape as rated Bay-friendly. And so I think this is a bit like a LEED, LEED certification regarding landscapes. And I think we probably do that already. But I'd like to see if we couldn't participate in that program so that we don't end up with a big zero on their list of bay-friendly rated landscapes, like I have here. Are you guys familiar with this at all?
Yeah, and one of our disadvantages with this community is we don't have a citywide landscaping and lighting district. So if they're talking about city-owned properties and
No, they're
landscaping
not.
in general.
Not necessarily. They
So, okay, then they're rating private development and private properties? Because I know with the bringing back the Natives Garden Tour and the Bay Friendly, we have a number of private residences that are certified. You know, I don't know.
Well,
how
maybe
that plays
somebody
into
could
it, but-
explore
Yeah.
how we would participate in this, because I just, again, I mean, all the cities in Alameda County except 2 are on this list.
So with the, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, so a few years back, we did update our landscape guidelines, and the vast majority of our policies there were in coordination with the Bay Friendly Landscape Program. So we have not applied for a specific designation, but the last time we updated our own guidelines, which apply to any new development, the standards were updated to be consistent. We are in a tricky edge of the bay. It's very hot here, and so we have limitations on water usage that are incorporated into our landscape guidelines. But it's a tricky landscape district. But we certainly can look into what it takes to be designated. I don't know if.
So with concurrence of the council, we could bring back an informational memo on that.
Yeah, I would appreciate that anyway.
Does it have anything to do with the fact that very little of our yard runoff goes to the bay?
Well, I don't know. I guess the thing that occurred to me when I heard about this was the new EOC, and whether or not, to your point, Stephen, that's a city project, and would that qualify?
And we can
It
bring you
may
back
be
that
too late to apply. I have no idea, but.
Did I get concurrence there? Yes. Very good.
Okay.
We'll bring
Thank you.
information on that.
Thank you.
Councilor Spadowski.
Sure, I'll keep it to June since it has been a while. But as others have mentioned, the rodeo parade, that was great, 100 years. Boy, what was that? 2 hours long? How many? I thought they had a record number of
109.
109 entrants in that parade.
Yeah, is that a record?
Yes.
Yeah,
Well,
so-
at least for a long time.
It was great because I was able to ride on the council float and then run to my daughter's
Yeah, you ended
section.
up
and
being
then
in
I
it
got
twice.
twice. I got to pull some water for her band, so that was a fun time. And the cattle drive, I'm glad it went off without a hitch. So that was a good event. June 13th, we had the Alameda San Joaquin Regional Rail Authority group. One of the items to come out of that is that we came up with a name for the new service, and that's Valley Link. There was a long discussion about what it
Tell
should
the
be
alternate
called.
names?
And there was a very creative alternate name. Instead of E-BART, they wanted to call it, somebody threw out F-BART. So that was a very interesting name that was thrown out. But yeah, that was one of many of the interesting names. But anyway.
Robust discussion.
Yeah, in the no bus discussion. The other items that I have to report, LAFTA, we were on the June 4th. I was at the board meeting. Also, we had projects and services earlier on today. The big item to report, other than our budget adoption and other relatively routine items, the one item to report on, though, June 22nd, we had the shared autonomous vehicle launch at the Dublin BART station. So that is a fully autonomous vehicle that LAVTA received a $1 million grant to start service in Dublin. So it's connecting riders that first mile, last mile to the Dublin BART station. I believe all 5 major news crews were out there. I don't know if there's more than 5, but that's how many I counted. And they were giving rides around the BART station already in a fully autonomous vehicle. So it goes rather slow right now. They're just in the testing phases, but it's very interesting to be in a vehicle that has no driver, no pedals, has brakes, but no steering wheel, and that'll be operating around the area. June 20th, I had the East Bay Community Choice Energy meeting. We're rolling out to businesses right now, And so far, the opt-out rate is below 1%. So it's 0.72 opt-out. So that's pretty good, right on track. The one item that I have for matters initiated, and this came up at the Alameda San Joaquin Regional Rail Authority, it's an idea out of that meeting. Tonight we had item 4.16, which was the resolution basically rescinding all of our resolutions related to full BART to Livermore. Now that does not look like it's happening through BART. It made me realize that we might have other full BART cleanup items either in our general plan. I know we have a statement that says that the council shall advocate for full BART down 580. I think we need to possibly get some language suggestions as how we can reinforce that to be Valley Link down 580. I know we have other documents that, CIP projects that speak about full BART. So I would like staff to go through, identify what you can, other cleanup items that we may have related to the change now, the realization that it's not going to be full BART, it'll be Valley Link. So I don't know if I'm being specific enough. It's just kind of a general search for anything else that we may need to clean up after this change.
So I understand the direction, if there's ultimately a majority of the council would want to, essentially is a list of those policies and other items that would need to be adjusted.
Correct.
So we would bring that in a memo form, and then the council would give us further direction as to what to do about those. Some of those, of course, are under your control. Others are not.
Right, because the alignment down 580 was voter approved, and it says advocate for the alignment down 580. I just want to make sure that we're keeping to past practices and other items that have been brought up in the past as to rail service in general.
Well, actually, it wasn't voter approved. The council adopted
the initiative, right, instead of putting it on the ballot. So it was a voter initiative that the council adopted. So I don't know what kind of supporting language we can have to reassure that that's still kind of the goal is down I-580, or I don't know. I'm looking for in the memo what we can do to kind of reinforce that.
What are you trying to reinforce? I'm missing.
I'm trying to reinforce the past decisions that were made in terms of alignment. There may be other things. I know we have a CIP that identifies $500,000 a year towards BART to Livermore. Well, okay, now what happens with that money in that direction? I don't know if there's anything else that we have written in policy that says that we should advocate for this. Well, full BART's not happening. Let's shift to the other mode that could happen. I don't know what else is out there, and that's what I'm asking staff to kind of look through. I know the general plan language, I know the CIP. I don't know if there's anything else that's kind of floating out there that might
So what we would bring back to you is an inventory of all the places in your policy and documents where there's a specific mention of BART.
And then we could pick and choose if we want.
And then you would tell us if what adjustments, if any, you'd like to make to those.
All right, thanks.
Okay.
And in that regard, would this be the point to talk about opposition to 2923 regarding BART lands? Because we do have some of those lands that are owned by BART, and now that BART is never going to be coming out, are those converted to open space? Some of them are over by the Vernal Pool Ferry Shrimp and north of 580, where the Federal Fish and Wildlife was disinclined to allow any development. So would that dovetail on that, or would that be something else?
Would be separate, but an update on that is that that action essentially by state law to remove your local land use authority over BART-owned land for both existing and planned station sites. And strangely enough, the definition, at least at last reading of that bill, would still include essentially BART land owned in Livermore. The fact that BART is never going to come, according to the existing board of directors, doesn't actually remove it from being planned. So there's no nice way to sort of say that doesn't make any sense. So your staff continues to support Tri-Valley efforts as well as efforts throughout essentially BART's service area to retain local land use with the local land use authority. The local transit agency has more than its hands full actually providing transit, adding an entire new level of responsibilities, including being a lead agent for a land use related items and all things related to that, including providing full infrastructure and other items, is a tremendous set of additional responsibilities for an agency that I don't think needs to look for additional responsibilities.
Well, aren't they focusing on their core system and not worrying about anything that goes out into the hinterlands?
Which essentially would, again, reinforce why the Tri-Valley communities have chosen to oppose that, and you, through your joint efforts there, continue to work with the legislature to deal with that issue.
Well, further, and one more thing on top of that is that, currently those lands are zoned for whatever they're zoned for, but the infrastructure was not sized when it was originally put in place, the water, sewer, everything else, to supply development, especially on the scale that they're talking about. So
It's unclear,
the infrastructure isn't built to accommodate that.
And it's unclear whether local regulations dealing with infrastructure would apply as the bill is actually written.
You get fire codes and a number of things.
Well, essentially, and impact fees would be sort of the most obvious of those before you even start. And essentially taking a particular property owner and allowing them to be outside of a comprehensive planning process, creates a level of complexity and where things actually don't work together. So from that perspective, it's a serious issue. And having transit districts or flood control districts or school districts or any other special districts sort of take over land use authority for a city is profoundly troubling.
And the mayor's question brought up something else that relates to this is it's not just the area with the fairy shrimp and the potential environmental issues. There's also the site that is half zoned for a BART station and then the other half for high density housing to support that station. Mm-hmm. I think we need to look at that zoning as well, saying that, because who knows what's happening with I guess BART is retaining the ownership of the land. The legislation didn't transfer that ownership of the land, but I think we need to look at a zoning designation above that, saying that, okay, if a BART station is not built, then we don't need the higher densities which don't fit with that neighborhood, that we kind of, potentially look at zoning a dual use zone that's a density that's more appropriate to the neighborhood.
We would add that to the list of your BART related items to be inventoried.
It's when we discuss this, there's certain things that are, that start popping up with, zoning, and we had zoning for potential stations. If those don't happen, then, how
The troubling piece of the state legislation is if that actually became law, you would lose any ability to influence what happened there.
Right. And I'm saying legislation aside, hopefully that doesn't pass and we don't have to deal with that. Then planning forward, should BART decide to sell it, we want to make sure that the zoning is appropriate for the surrounding uses.
And Honorable Mayor, I do have one item.
I'm not quite done yet.
Very good. Once you're
Okay,
done.
so the 13th June, again, I'm just going to June on this, the Alameda County Mayor's Conference. We met in Piedmont, had an update from the League of California Cities and the Piedmont City Report. The 14th was the LAFCO Policy and Budget Committee, which we meet periodically and did work on the budget at that time. On the 20th, we had the last and final meeting of the successor agency for the redevelopment agency. On the 21st, I attended a town hall meeting at the VA building, and they're talking about the details around closing the VA hospital. Now, they've been talking about this for the last 10 years now. But now the construction is starting on French Camp, so they're beginning to start putting a lot of more emphasis on closing the VA. The point that I made is that our entire congressional delegation, from Congressman Swalwell, McNerney, Garamendi, and Denham, are all in favor of keeping that facility open, or at least keeping it in service to the veterans. And this is something that's very important to the 12,000 veterans that live in the Tri-Valley. and to the entire community. So they understand it's very difficult to get from here either to French Camp or from here to Fremont or even Palo Alto. So that fight continues. And on the 23rd, a couple of fun things. Barry Schiff, who is a well-known pilot, 28,000 hours and over 355 aircraft, celebrated his 80th birthday, and he found the plane which he learned to fly in 66 years ago. It's in Aranca. It's a little tail dragger, and it's at the Livermore Airport. So he coordinated the effort. It doesn't have a starter, so it's literally one of these planes that you have to crank to get going. It was pretty remarkable, but he took his 80th birthday flight in the plane that he learned to fly in. It was the plane that he'd got his original license in when he was 17 years old. So it's very cool. There's a lot of folks there to join in the celebration at the Livermore Airport. And also Mary Benitez, Livermore resident, she turned 100 on Saturday. So a couple of long life memorial things going on. So the fun stuff and just light bulbs and ladies live longer in Livermore. So you had something else to add?
Yes, Honorable Mayor. Our advice on 601 of not actually having a motion and a second, we actually, on further examination, read through the league's details. So legally, there wasn't a requirement, but the league actually strongly prefers to have a motion and a second on your delegate and your alternate.
Oh, okay. I offered that.
You did, and you were right, and we steered you wrong. So I wanted to make that
We
correction.
had to bring that
and give
back 1 year because we didn't have an actual.
Yeah. So
Okay.
with the council's pleasure to make a motion.
So in that case, I will make the motion that the voting delegate is Councilmember Carling, the alternate is myself, the mayor, Marchand. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Councilmember Coomber. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Passed unanimously.
And that's it for us. Thank you, Your Honor.
Okay, thank you very much. And with that, meeting adjourned to July 9th.